Thank you, Ginny.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hello, hello.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yes, last night, this was a disco. We had 35 people in here dancing, and we had 7 DJs. It was fog. All these lights were flickering and going crazy. And now we're going to have a nice little literary afternoon.
You managed to get it together in time?
Barely. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. I'm going to get water and chairs and stuff. So.
Great, lovely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
enjoy. Take it away.
Hello, everybody here and on the live stream, and welcome to our afternoon of enjoying some literary readings with some amazing translators who have come today. So my name's Ginny Tapley Takemori. I've been a literary translator from Japanese for almost 20 years now, I guess. I've translated everything from early Meiji, like Izumi Kyoka or Koda Rohan, to what I mainly do now is mostly contemporary work, and especially focusing on Japanese women writers like Sayaka Murata and Kyoko Nakajima. So that's me. I'd like to thank Jeffrey Drusan and his whole team here at Human Art Studio for holding this event here today. It's an amazing space, and it's such a really, we've got an amazing lineup for you. And I'd also like to thank all of today's readers who so generously donating their time and talent to us today, and who've traveled from as far as Kamakura, Kawasaki, Yokohama, Tokyo, and also Iwaki in Fukushima. People have come a long way today. I've known many of them for many years, having first met in one of the workshops or masterclasses held by the British Centre for Literary Translation in the UK and in Tokyo. And others I've come to know more recently. But in any case, I'm immensely grateful to them all and to the wider translation community for all your solidarity and support. So thank you for that. And today's readings will be divided into 2 parts. The first part focused on non-fiction, including memoir, essay, poetry, and and the second on fiction. So I hope it'll give everybody an idea of the rich variety of Japanese literature and the work of translators. So please sit back and enjoy. I'll get things going with the first reading. It's from a memoir by Mayumi Inaba about the 20 years she spent living with her cat at a time when she was finding herself as a writer. The original title is Mi no Enai Asa, or Mornings Without Me, which is the title of the US edition. The UK edition is titled Mornings with My Cat Me, but it's the same content, just different title. And it'll touch a chord with anyone who has lived with a pet animal and also had to deal with their loss. I was recently awarded the 2025 Sasakawa Translation Prize for it. So I'll read 2 passages, the first when Inaba first found me as a kitten, and the second from near the end of her life. That's the US cover. Actually, that's the title I prefer anyway. So. Okay. So it was the end of summer 1977. At least I think it was late summer. I found a cat, a little ball of fluff, a teeny tiny baby kitten. Her face was the size of a coin and was split by her huge, wide open mouth as she hung suspended in the dark. She was stuck in the fence of a junior high school on the banks of the Tamagawa River in the Wai neighborhood of Fuchu City in western Tokyo. What direction was the wind blowing that night? It was most likely a gentle breeze blowing up to my house from the river. I followed her cries as they carried on this breeze. At first I searched the gaps in the hedge around my house and in amongst the weeds of the empty plots on my street, but her cries were coming from high up, not low down. I looked up and suddenly saw a little white dot. The large expanse of the school grounds was shrouded in the dim light. Before me was a high fence separating the road and the school. Somebody must have shoved the kitten into the fence. She was hanging so high up that even on tiptoe I could barely reach her as she clung on for dear life. With sharp, pointy ears, innocent, glistening eyes, and a pink slit of a mouth, she was puffing her body up as much as she could to stop herself from falling, looking down at me fearfully. It was obvious that she hadn't dropped there out of nowhere or climbed up by herself, but she had been put there deliberately out of malice or mischief. "Come with me." I reached out my arms and the tiny kitten clung to me with surprising strength. She was freezing cold, a helpless little thing. I hugged her to my chest and a sweet animal scent filled my nostrils. Her body was infused with the smell of milk and summer. The smooth feel of soft baby fur filled the palm of my hand. She couldn't have been long born, yet she had already perfectly formed needle-sharp claws, and her nose and mouth and everything about her was tiny and adorable. As I stroked her, she leaned her entire body weight into me, helplessly light, and bumped her head against me a few times. I didn't know where her mother was, or whether she had been dumped or had strayed from her mother and gotten lost before someone put her in the fence. All I knew was that she must have felt utterly desperate hanging up there, and I just wanted to give her somewhere cozy to rest, at least for the night. Did I have any milk at home? I'd have to find a box where she could feel safe. My mind full of such thoughts, I hugged her to my chest and rushed back home. A kitten, I told my husband as I ran into the kitchen. She was crying outside. I held her up by the scruff of the neck for him to see. Look how little she is. My cotton shirt made a ripping sound as I peeled her away from my chest. In the light, I could see she had a pretty face. She was a calico, with white, black, and tan stripes on her head and patches on her back, and a belly that was pure white. So now I'm going to jump about 20 years. And now Mi is coming to the end of her life. Mayumi Inaba is basically pondering on the fact that she's going to lose her quite soon. As I walked through the neighborhood, I couldn't help thinking how much my own life had transformed over the years since I first moved here, trying to convince myself that things would somehow work out. The most important part of this transformation was that I had grown accustomed to living alone with me and to the editorial production work I had started with the woman who gave me a job and to other friends. And the things that I had been writing, not knowing whether they would ever come to anything, had now taken on a life of their own. Before I knew it, I had become an established writer. As the long, long years passed, I was crawling out of a dark tunnel. The days I had spent without knowing what I wanted to write had nurtured me without my realizing it. It had all started with a kitten. Without me, I would never have come to live in this neighborhood. I would never have wandered around every nook and cranny of the reclaimed land or gazed upon the seasonal colors of the water in the network of canals. Nor would I have become so absorbed in listening to the embryo of a neighborhood transforming. The reason I could pinpoint so many achievements in the years that had passed was that I hadn't actually been living alone. I hadn't been able to live with another person, but living with me, I had become sensitive to the smell and the presence of the breeze over the seasons, the warmth of the light. After me had started getting old and infirm, and I had established a regular routine of the hours I spent working and the times I went to bed and got up, I became even more sensitive to the sounds around me and the changes in the body of the animal I lived with. When Mi was fast asleep, I would walk quietly around the apartment. As she stopped liking the hard, dry food she had in the past and savoured softer, soupy food, the sound of her crunching became less and less frequent, and eventually there was only the sound of her quietly lapping up wet foods like raw egg and milk. In early spring, I would take breaks in my nightly work to go down to an empty plot on the narrow street to look for the weeds that Mi liked. I didn't know much about weed types, but I knew which ones she did and didn't like. In the years since moving here and making my cat the centre of my life, I realised that my time with Mi hadn't been stirred even for a moment. While I'd struggled with breaking up with my husband, being forced out of my job, and several relationships with people that hadn't gone well, there wasn't a single thing that I had ever felt had been lost between me and myself. Mi had always been there. Even when I'd been working or spending time with friends, whether she was self-aware or not, she had remained at my side, her demeanour and expression unchanged as she aged. According to de Beauvoir, you do not die from being born, nor from having lived, nor from old age. You die from something. Nothing that happens to a man is ever natural. And it was the same for animals, wasn't it? They died in accidents, of illnesses, or were killed. But my cat was different. At least the Me before me was aging, just like a neighborhood changing slowly at an imperceptible speed. I no longer listened to music. Mi spent a lot of time sleeping, and I didn't want to disturb her peaceful rest. Here in this apartment, where the summer breeze passed through from the east to the north, and in autumn and winter from the north to the east, I listened to the sounds of the constantly changing neighborhood while also thinking of the death that would soon come to me. It was definitely coming. It was already close by. Amid the smell of her body waste that never went away, however much I cleaned, and a not-so-short time spent on emptying her bladder and bowels, I gazed spellbound at the constantly moving lights in the neighborhood, the wind that was always blowing around the balcony, and the lights of Tokyo that I could see from the balcony were becoming more beautiful every year. As I gazed at the lights, I couldn't help thinking about what would be the most appropriate kind of death for me. The truth was that the best would be for her to sleep in the depths of withered leaves, trees, and soil, but she was unable to go anywhere anymore, so I would have to meet her, and she would have to meet her end here. Gazing at the lights, I opened the windows wide. The breeze blew through. I was happy that there was always a breeze, maybe because being high up we were surrounded by space. The breeze from the east to the north blew away the unavoidable smell emanating from Mi's body. Every time I opened the windows, it cleared the stuffiness. If I could, I would have liked to place Mi in this cool breeze. Her body would gradually turn into dust like in Tibetan sky burials. Since ancient times, animals had known when and how they would die. I had heard of cats choosing to die in dried leaves or under a floor where the breeze passes. But even if Mi wanted to, she could not seek out a place to die. As I gazed at her sleeping, the same scene kept coming into my mind. This scene was the deserted ruins of the building we lived in. The glass windows were broken, and the walls were full of cracks made by the wind and the rain. Only the light and breeze passed freely through the many gaps. The scene of my cat lying there, crumbling unseen. Just as the breeze fluttered the white plastic bags and papers on the wastelands of the reclaimed land, so the white fur on Mi's belly swayed in the breeze and then blended with the light, eventually to disappear. That was nature. That was natural. While this is what I imagined, I knew that she could never have that sort of death. And so what sort of death was suitable? Was it better to hold her as she died? Was it better for her to die quietly while her human wasn't there? This was constantly on my mind as I heard in the sound of Mi tottering slowly around the floor, and the sound of her dragging her haunches and dripping urine. It's over. There's no more time left. Okay, well, sorry to start all the readings off on a somber note like that, but it's only going to go up. So next we have Lisa Wilcott, who is a Yokohama-based writer and translator originally from the United States. She holds an MA in Japanese literature and culture from Stanford University and has been recognized by Japan's Agency of Cultural Affairs for her literary translation. Her literary awards and publications include translations of work by Kaoru Fujino, Yoshitaka Shinsuke, Kayako Nishimaki, Ryoji Arai, Shingo Nagasaki, Shiho Kikuchi, and Ritsuko Naito. Her creative fiction has appeared in Tokyo Weekender and the anthology Structures of Kyoto. And today she's going to read a piece called Cats by Saito Mokichi. No, please give her some applause for the introduction.
Thank you. So given the present, the boom of cats in Japanese literature, I thought I'd bring another one. But this one is from 1941. It predates the current, and it's got a little bit of a different flavor, something all of its own. It's very short. It's a zuihitsu, which is a very short essay. Zuihitsu means following the brush, or it's kind of a stream of consciousness kind of thing. And it's from Saito Mokichi, a poet and a psychiatrist. And it's from his collection called Shaseki. About half a dozen cats are always hanging around near my house. Some live in the empty lot next door where they were abandoned as kittens. Once, a female cat, it might have been someone's pet or maybe it was on its own, waltzed right into my front room. She was such a little coquette that I didn't bother to shoo her away. The tatami floor was awash with old poetry journals and the bookshelves were all a jumble. In the alcove, 2 hanging scrolls lay rolled up beside their Polonia storage boxes, which I had been commissioned to inscribe with calligraphy. In short, the whole place was a mess. The cat pawed at the poetry journals for a while, but I didn't pay her much attention. But at some point, I sensed something strange was afoot and looked up to see her going into the alcove. She hopped right into one of the Polonia storage boxes and urinated. You could hear the spray as it hit the box and ricocheted onto the scrolls. It all happened so fast I didn't even have time to get angry. Without missing a beat, I had that little vixen packed up in the car and taken somewhere outside the city limits. Another time, this was a few years ago, we had an infestation of rat mites. True to the name, they generally go after rats, especially juveniles. Therefore, rat mites usually indicate a rat's nest somewhere in the house. However, in this case, what the mites were dining on was my cat. It was a Siberian, 3rd generation under my care, if I recall. After the mites got hold of it, the cat scratched itself constantly, every swipe of its claws releasing a shower of mites, bright red with blood from their recent meal. I'm sorry to say, but that cat too went for a ride out to the suburbs. Sometime after that, I again had a good cat that got rat mites. This time, at the first sign of infestation, I gave it a warm bath in an anti-parasitic solution, but to no avail. Nothing worked, and I ended up abandoning that one too. I had raised them both from a young age, and they were well-trained and good-tempered, so the whole business was most unfortunate. Since then, other neighborhood cats have come into my front room one after another and made themselves at home, but not one had any manners, and none of them lasted for long. Yet, despite having been evicted from the house, they still live nearby, the same as before. It's said that a cat does not remember its master's face, and if the two were to meet on the street, the cat would run away as if from a stranger. I, myself, often forget people's faces and have to apologize for not recognizing them, and it's only getting worse. Take, for instance, the philosopher M, whom I met once in Paris and then several times in Tokyo. Even so, on one occasion, I was mortified at not recognizing him 2 or 3 times in a row. And then there's the esthetician K, whom I met in Germany and again in Sendai, but then didn't remember him when we ran into each other in Tokyo. Just thinking about this gives me the jitters. Cats are vastly different from dogs, despite both being animals that dwell among humans. It's no easy task to make an alley cat even remotely as friendly as a dog. Thinking about which I'd be if I were an animal, I must say I'm more feline than canine. And this train of thought always depresses me and makes me think badly of cats. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I must admit, I kind of identify with the author there because we also got so many cats outside our house, and some of them inside our house as well. But, yeah. Next up, we have Sylvia Gallagher, who is from, you have to tell me how to say this properly, Aotearoa? From New Zealand. And she now lives in Fukushima, where she works as a freelance translator. Her translations include a short story by Hiroko Yamada and The 9 Lives of a Bookshop Cat by Kentaro Utsugi. Today she's going to read an essay from the collection People from Onahama by Riken Komatsu. Thank you, Sylvia.
Hello. Yes, so today I'm going to read from this, which is Onahama People's People from Onahama, or maybe the Onahama Crew. It's a book by a local author from Iwaki, where I live. And it's a series of essays about, it's kind of based on conversations with people from around Onahama and coastal Fukushima, mostly from around 5 years ago, so 10 years after the 3/11 earthquake and tsunami and nuclear disaster. And I suppose one of the themes of the book is kind of, well, the word chudahampa, or kind of not kind of fully being one thing or the other. So for example, Iwaki itself, it's not really a tourist town. It's not the biggest port in Tohoku. It wasn't that affected by the disaster comparatively. Or Komatsu-san himself, affected by the disaster, often labeled as such and made a voice of people who were affected by the disaster, but relatively speaking, is he as much of a victim as other people? And the essay that I'm going to read part of is about the release of the treated water into the Pacific from Fukushima Daiichi. It's a very kind of, it's a portion that's very frustrated, I suppose, which I would like to say is not really indicative of the overall tone of the book, which is more kind of hopeful, but I think it paints a good picture of the local response. And also I'm going to read from my phone, I'm sorry. Okay. It'll be on a foggy morning when I go out to get the newspaper, or as I'm cycling home through the clinging humidity after working late. Sometimes I'll catch a whiff of the sea. The sea. Sweet, hazy memories of summer holidays, right? No, not like that. This is the reek of rotting mountains, of who knows what kinds of seaweed washed up by the waves, mixed with the fishy odor issuing from the producers scattered through the residential areas, drying samba marinated in mirin. It's what I can only call the smell of Onahama. And when I smell it, I know in my heart that I'm home. On misty mornings, it isn't just the smell, but the shrill blare of steam whistles from the port. At times like those, I feel strangely proud that this is where I live. Today, my home is adjacent to a seaside industrial zone, a great grid of towering factories. But when my father was a child, he says, it was a 5-minute walk to the vast sandy expanse of Onahama Beach. At the edge of the sand, there was a forest of black pines, Kuromatsu, which gave the area its name, Matsunonaka. The Komatsu family has lived here within sight and smell of the beach for generations. And for that reason, those unexpected whiffs of the Onahama smell make me imagine my life if I'd had a beach on my doorstep. I'd slip on sandals, fling open the door. It's a quick dash to the black pine forest, and beyond is the seawall, and beyond that, the beautiful expanse of sand and the Pacific Ocean. Little fishing boats haul in catches to be dried or turned into kamaboko by neighborhood producers, then appear as a staple on household dinner tables. If not for the industrial zone, perhaps that quintessential port town life could have been mine. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Enough's been said about that treated water, hasn't it? It was summer 2021. I dropped by my usual fishmonger and was chatting with the boss when that's what he came out with. That spring, there'd been a meeting of cabinet ministers, and the Prime Minister had announced that releasing the treated water into the ocean was a realistic solution. He also gave it a specific time frame, 2 years from then. The media, who up until then had been waiting to see how things developed, took this as their cue to descend en masse on Fukushima's ports, where they began to report on the debate. It was around then that I found myself at the fishmonger, so I asked him, "Did you hear? They're going to release the treated water?" You heard the response I got. His shop has stayed open through thick and thin. A few days after the earthquake and tsunami, they opened up the well in the shop to distribute water. And on days where there was no fish to sell after the nuclear disaster, they stocked up on vegetables so that the community would have food to put on the table. Its reputation was built on selling the best tasting fish, so I've heard the old boss talk about the shame he felt having to sell other things to keep the business afloat, just as I've heard him talk about his pride in being an Onahama shopkeeper. I remember one day when a catch of bonito tuna was landed at the Onahama port. I couldn't bear the idea of it selling out before I could get my hands on some. So I emailed the boss's daughter, who handles the front of the shop. A list of questions came back, short and to the point. Sashimi? Fillet? Do you want the cut from the belly? Skin on or off? When evening comes, it's all I can do to keep from running to pick it up. The boss slices me a beautiful piece of fish, saying gruffly, "We can't have you eating anything but the best bonito tuna, can we?" He works with an expert's eye and skill, while the rock and roll of Eikichi Yazawa plays from the speaker behind him. It's all just perfect. A few times, I brought up the release of the treated water with him, but I don't think he ever gave me a clear answer on where he stood on it. He'd say something like, just so long as people still want to go out and fish, or, oh, whatever they do, we'll just keep going on as we always have. Then he'd get back to work. I think that continuing to earn a living the same way that he always had was his way of fighting back against it all. And the thing is, even when the fishing crews and fishmongers made it very clear where they stood, it didn't change anything. It didn't change the fact that the decision to discharge the water had already been made. After saying that nothing would happen without the understanding of all people concerned, the government made its announcement over the head of the fishery cooperative's opposition. At that point, why would answering media questions make any difference? It was a reminder that we were still living under the long, long shadow left by the nuclear disaster. I'll finish there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Now we have Janine Beichman. Janine, where have you gone? You're there. Okay. Janine studied Japanese poetry at Columbia University, where she received her doctorate. Her published translations include works by Japan's greatest poets from the 8th century down to the present day, including Kakinomoto Hitomaru, Masao Kashiki, Yosano Akiko, Ooka Makoto, and Nishigaki Rin. She is also the author of the original No play Drifting Fires, which has been performed in the United States and Japan. Her awards include fellowships from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, and PEN America, and she is on the judging committee for the Japan International Translation Committee. So please, Janine, come and read for us. Today she'll be reading excerpts of writings by Masao Kashiki from her biography hymn titled Masao Kashiki, His Life and Works.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Is this a good place?
Fine.
Okay, yeah. I realized listening to everyone that, like everybody else, I started out by thinking I would read a translation of a different writer, and then I felt that the things by Shiki that I wanted to read just needed too much explanation, so I gave that up, and now I'm reading just the beginning of my biography of Shiki. Here it is. This is my first book, not my latest book. And it has quotations that are autobiographical by him and others, but the voice, I guess, is my voice, for which I apologize. So anyway, this is, as I said, Masao Kashiki, His Life and Works, and this is Chapter 1, Life from Samurai to Poet. So photographs of Masao Kashiki, can everyone hear me, by the way? Okay. What?
You're great.
Okay. Photographs of Masao Kashiki reveal a symmetrical face with rather square jaw and forehead and widely spaced eyes. The overall impression is one of balance and strength, even in the photographs of his last years when he was an invalid. The impression the photographs give is an accurate one, for Shiki was a man of great energy and vision, with the charisma necessary to inspire and propel a literary movement even as a bedridden invalid. In personality, he was deeply ambitious, taking his chosen vocation, literature, with great seriousness. Yet, at the same time, he was witty, ironic, even at times frivolous. As a friend, he could be aggressively domineering or touchingly protective, a passionate man with fierce attachments to his friends. He never, so far as is known, had a romantic involvement. His primary physical enjoyment, particularly after he became an invalid, appears to have been food. As a writer, some time may be required before one acquires a taste for him, but once one does, he never palls. An irresistible sense of life and animation imbues his works. Shiki's life lends itself to metaphor. From his birth until his choice of a vocation in 1892, it can be seen as a journey through different cultural worlds, moving from the sober Tokugawa period Confucianism of his early upbringing into the heady, exciting atmosphere of the early Meiji period, with its many new literary, intellectual, and political currents imported from the West. Finally, in choosing literature as his vocation, he settled at first on a part of it, the haiku, which represented for him both the values of the Tokugawa period and those of the Meiji period. His ambition for immortality through literature at first knew no bounds, but in the end, his health destroyed by tuberculosis, he made peace with his own mortality, and in his last poems expressed a sense of spiritual resignation that seems close to enlightenment. In light of Shiki's spiritual and intellectual journey from the world of the Tokugawa period into that of the Meiji period, and then finally to a kind of synthesis of the two, it seems particularly appropriate that he was born in 1867, in the last year of the Tokugawa period, just 1 year before Meiji begins. Matsuyama, From Confucianism to Civil Rights, 1867 to 1883. Shiki was born on October 14, 1867, into a low-ranking samurai family in the castle town of Matsuyama-han on the island of Shikoku. His father, a man of undistinguished attainments, was an alcoholic and died when Shiki was 5. The family had not been well off even before the death of Shiki's father, but with his death and the commutation of samurai pensions into a lump sum payment in money by the new government, they, like most of the other samurai families in Matsuyama, were left with no fixed source of income. Shiki's mother had no choice but to teach sewing in order to support him and his younger sister, Ritsu. In such an environment, education was the only form of wealth. It seems natural that Shiki's maternal grandfather, Ohara Kanzan, who was a distinguished Confucian scholar and Shiki's earliest teacher, became Shiki's ideal. Kanzan was a samurai's samurai. He possessed fortitude, pride, a contempt for material wealth, and a detached humor that enabled him to endure the most humiliating poverty with equanimity. Nothing could better evoke the character of such a man and the lineage as well of many of Shiki's later attitudes than the following anecdote told by Kanzan's son, Kato Tsunetada, who happens to have been Shiki's uncle. This is what Tsunetada wrote. I think it was the end of 1873. One day, while I was massaging my father's back, Kimbei, the owner of the Tanaka pawn shop on Tojin Street, strode in without even knocking and said, "Sensei, let's have the interest you owe me." My father, with an air of slight embarrassment, replied, "Kimbei, I'm terribly sorry. But this year we haven't been able to make the New Year's rice cakes yet, and I haven't even the money to buy the children's kites. I'll definitely repay part after the New Year, so please, just have a little more patience." Kimbei was silent for some time. Then he suddenly stood up, threw the water from the hand washing basin into the garden and said, "Your kites and rice cakes are no concern of mine. At least I can take this." And off he walked, carrying the brass basin, which was over 2 feet in diameter. My father turned to my mother and said with a laugh, "Kimbei always was a man of action, wasn't he?" My mother went silently to the storeroom and wept by herself. Soon afterwards, my younger brother came in from playing and entreated my father, "Papa, when are you going to buy our kites?" I still can't forget how bad the rice cakes in our soup tasted the next morning. I resolved then and there to cheer my father up by redeeming the hand basin at all costs. During the day, I pounded rice, and in the evenings, I copied out an elementary school text called Vocabulary. After a few months, I proudly brought home the basin from the Tanakaya. My father looked at me with annoyance and said sternly, "Do you suppose you'll become great by worrying about such trivial things?" Kanzan, unquote, Kanzan was adamantly opposed to the New World of the Meiji period. He refused, for example, to study any Western languages. In the last line of a Chinese poem, which he had Shiki copy out, he expressed his disgust for languages which were written horizontally instead of vertically like Japanese. And this is the last line of the poem that Kanzan wrote. "Never in your life read that writing which sidles sideways like a crab across the page." He also clung to the outward signs of his samurai identity as long as possible. In 1871, the government had authorized or ordered former samurai to cut their hair and discard their swords. Kanzan not only refused to do either, but even made his little grandson Shiki follow his example. His efforts to resist the tide of change proved futile, however. Shiki, having become the only boy at school with long hair, except for his cousin Ryo, also under Kanzan's tutelage, repeatedly begged permission to cut his hair and finally won the support of his uncle, that's Tsunetada, who asked Kanzan if he would not change his mind. Realizing that further resistance was useless, Kanzan reluctantly gave his permission, and Shiki joyfully cut his hair. Until 1876, when the government went one step further and forbade former samurai to wear swords, Shiki was never permitted to go visiting without a short sword or dagger at his waist. Although Shiki entered public elementary school at age 6, the real center of his education, at least until he was in his teens, was outside the public schools, in his studies of classical Chinese history, philosophy, and literature under a series of private tutors. The first of these tutors was his grandfather, Kanzan, from whom he learned the elements of reading Chinese beginning in 1874. Each morning, he arose at 5 when it was still dark and sleepily made his way to his grandfather's house. There he studied the Mencius, one of the so-called 5 classics, proceeding later in the morning to the public elementary school. Kanzan doted on his grandson and said it was a pleasure to teach him, for he never forgot anything. Shiki, in turn, acquired from him a reverence for scholarship which he carried with him for the rest of his life and which deeply influenced his approach to literature. He preserved this even after he had discarded much else of the Confucian philosophy and samurai morality that Kanzan had tried to instill in him. Unlike his doting father, however, Shiki did not remember himself as a diligent student. In Fudemakase, Scribblings, a series of short miscellaneous essays he wrote between 1884 and 1892, Shiki confessed to having been an indifferent student who wanted the glory of being an eminent scholar, but was really more interested in writing poetry than in studying. Quote, this is from Shiki's essay in Scribblings. As a boy, I was too lazy to study. When I was 7 or 8, Kanzan reproached me. When I was a boy, he said, I did not play all the time as you do. This made me think. He was the foremost Confucian scholar in Matsuyama-han. Being a constant witness to the respect he was shown in all quarters, I too wanted to be a scholar, to be his equal. But his words made me realize that he had devoted himself to learning from childhood. This touched something in me, and I said to myself, I want to surpass him, but if he has always studied so hard, I'll never be able to become his assistant, let alone his superior. Still, I don't like to study. What can I do? You just see this little 8-year-old, cogitating. Time passed, but my thoughts did not change. Even after I had come to Tokyo, I was the same. He came to Tokyo when he was 15. The only thing I studied at all was writing poetry. Schoolwork always came last. However, Kanzan's admonition remained firmly in my mind, and I always thought I should be studying, even though I hated school. Unquote. Kanzan died in the spring of 1875 at age 57, while gazing at the cherry blossoms in his garden. After his death, Shiki continued his studies under other teachers. By the time he was 11, he had composed his first poem in classical Chinese and was also able to compose essays in that language, Kambun. Most of the texts he read under his tutors had been written in ancient China and were typical of those that had been used by young men of the samurai class during the late Tokugawa period. The contents of the essays he wrote for public school, however, were a far cry from those of the Chinese classics. When he was 13, he collected several of these essays for his own amusement. The first piece in the collection, Yoken Setsu, on Western dogs, is Shiki's earliest extant piece of writing. It goes like this. Western dogs are the best of animals and often do what people cannot. Let me explain. Japanese dogs only help in hunting and scare away burglars at night. However, Western dogs save people from drowning and rescue travelers buried under heavy snow in cold countries. People use them to pull sleds and deliver letters. I have not room to enumerate their virtues. How much superior, then, are Western dogs to Japanese dogs? The virtues of Western dogs are truly great. Unquote. As a child, Shiki had shed with great relief the long hair that was a badge of his samurai birth and a symbolic link with the past. Now, approaching adolescence, he showed himself open to Western civilization in a way that directly contradicted Kanzan's adamant resistance. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. You want your chair as well?
Thank you. Leave my chair.
Thank you so much for that. Next we have Michael Watson, who taught for 40 years in Tokyo and Yokohama. Sorry, 44 years. 44 in Tokyo and Yokohama before moving to Iwaki in Fukushima. He is working on 2 translation projects in his field of medieval Japanese war tales and Noh drama. And today he's going to read an excerpt from the Noh play Daihanya. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. so I brought a prop that I won't be seeing. And I'll keep it short in my addition to the program. So my reading is 3 excerpts from a still unpublished translation of a no play called Daihanya, the Great Wisdom Sutra. And here's the background story, as brief as I can make it. Daihanya is an old play, 15th or 16th century, that fell out of the performance repertoire. Fortunately, some chant books, this is a modern chant book, for example, where the text is written out with musical annotation. A chant book survived, a number of chant books survived, as did a medieval masque used for the main actor. In 1991, it was edited and choreographed for its first staging in centuries as a revived no, what's called a fukyoku no, and that's the chant book for the revival. In a DVD of this performance in 2006 was also very helpful in understanding it. It takes about 70 minutes in modern performance, and I'll try to do it in 8. This play is an example of how works in many genres and media give a highly imaginary account of a historical figure who made an epic journey to the West. Japanese will know the word sayuki, right? Crossing China by the Silk Road to India. A pioneering figure in East Asian translation history, the Chinese pilgrim monk Xuanzang, Genjo Hoshi in Japanese, overcame many difficulties to reach India, studying there for years before returning to China with hundreds of sutras in Sanskrit for translation, a whole 16 years in all. His translation of the Great Wisdom Sutra is the one still used in Japan today, and where he's also known as Sanzo Hoshi, the 3 treasure monk, and the play calls him both Genjo, the equivalent of the Chinese name, and Sanzo, 3 treasure. The play opens with Sanzo, as I'll call him, setting off for India with one aim, not to bring back many sutras, but to bring back just one, the Great Wisdom Sutra. And my reading will begin at the point where he nears a mountain range in Western Asia, one of the stans today, only to find his way blocked by a river that is too wide to cross, the flowing sands. This is where he meets a strange-looking figure who guards the river. So the pilgrim is the waki, and the strange figure is the shite. The pilgrim does not remember, but in past lives he has encountered the river guardian 7 times before. As you'll hear, he also gets some serious translation help. So that's enough to set the scene for the encounter between the pilgrim and the river guardian. And at many points, the chorus will also take over the narration and also speak in place of the guardian. So I'll try to indicate, if I remember, I'll try to indicate the transitions by raising my fan, pointing it actually down like this, as members of the chorus do when the chorus begins to sing, but I'll probably forget, so don't worry too much if I forget. So, I also indicate the waki by a slightly higher voice, and shite as a lower voice, and a little slower, but I'll probably forget about that too. You there, sir, could you tell me how this river might be crossed? Whatever do you mean by that? These are called the flowing sands. Pure sands floats on the riverbed. The depths are unfathomable, the distance beyond bounds. Those high mountain ranges you see over there are the steep Pamirs. Even if you were to cross the river, it would be difficult to surmount those peaks. Yes, that may be true, but to reach India, that is the path that must be taken. But tell me, why do you desire to go to India? When I went to the imperial capital, I made a great vow to bring back the sacred scrolls of the Great Wisdom Sutra to China and to spread it in all directions. How remarkable! Indeed, how remarkable. You made a great vow like this in a former life. Yet in the end you failed. Frustrated by the lord of this river, you lost your life 7 times. How strange it is to hear of this. You speak as if you saw this before, in 7 earlier lives, at this very place. This is indeed true, strange as it may seem. Second extract. In this river There dwells a lord whose name is Deep Sands, demon-like in form, yet in his heart he has vowed to protect the holy Dharma, with a vow as deep as the river depths. From the three worlds and the realm are gathered, the desires and passions of mortals, to form the sand in this river. Deep is the name, deep are the sands, and so we call them the flowing sands. 7 times was this monk's life taken by the great king, reigning over the deep sands, his soul taking different forms, sometimes as child, sometimes as teacher or companion. Reborn again, now he comes opportunely to encounter the Dharma. Sir Monk, to you can now be granted both the journey to India and the Holy Sutra. I have heard of the flowing sands of the Pamirs. Tell me, though, who might you be? To what end should I conceal it now? I have dwelt in this river for many years. I am the great king of the great deep sands. It is I who have impeded you in 7 past lives. Doubt me not, for doubt is deep like the sands. The divine powers respond, saying, grant him the great wisdom sutra. Evening waves move on the river as smoothly as on lapis lazuli. You will pass easily to the other side. Wait now, Genjo. Wait a while, Sanzo. Nakairi, interlude. The beat of the waves, the sound of the drum echo on the riverbank. The storm winds blow from the peaks through the pines, playing the koto, gong, barrel drum, biwa, cymbals, flute and reeds. 25 bodhisattvas perform 12 dance pieces, taking the monk Genjo on their left and right, with sleeves shining on their heavily raiment. The bodhisattvas transport him across the waves of the flowing sands. Now is the journey to India made possible, a rare boon. The valley winds blow hard, waves of cloud. Rising to the surface, a host of dragon gods appears. Small dragons in the vanguard, hastening the clouds from the distant valleys. They seem to rise. Large and small dragons pay homage to the holy man, showing him reverence for this thanks. But look there, a cloud floating over the peaks of the Pamirs is blown forward by the wind, falling down in the turbulence, caught up in a maelstrom of clouds and water. Mountains and rivers are shaken by the 6 earthquakes. Out of a rock door of a natural cave appears the form of Deep Sands, bearing on his head the holy Prajna scripture. Here you are, the sutra that you desired. I present it to you now, he said, taking from his back the sutra case and placing it on the bank. He then opens the upper drawer and takes out the scrolls of the Wisdom Sutra, giving them to Sanzo, and sat himself on a rock. Sanzo opened the sutra. It reads, Dai Hanya Haramikyo Kandaichi Sanzo Hoshi Busho Yakuto, the first volume of the Great Wisdom Sutra, translated by Priest Sanzo in compliance with imperial edict. And as he read this aloud in a high voice, there withdrew all deeds and evil demons in 10,000 li. Heavenly beings appeared from the worlds in 10 directions, auspicious signs for days and nights without end. So then, here it is. Your wish is fulfilled, he said, taking the sutra up again and storing it in the upper drawer of the case. Make haste and return. Spread the sutra in all corners of the world. I appear in my Dharma body and shall be the guardian god of this sutra. Believe and trust in me. Sanzo shoulders the sutra case, bowing to Deep Sand in gratitude. He faces the flowing sands. The river current parts to the right and left. The river current parts, creating flat sand. Overjoyed, Sanzo walks across to the far bank. Standing on top of a rock, Deep Sands calls out, "Stop there, Sanzo! Stop there, Sanzo!" The monk turns about, then regretfully takes his leave. I have crossed the river, he answers. Deep sands, gazes down into the unfathomable abyss, then disappears from view into the infernal mud. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was amazing. Wow. Yeah. Okay, next up we have, that's a difficult act to follow, but but Corey is up for it. So he's a British-Australian writer, scholar and translator living in Tokyo. Corey Wakeling, this is, sorry. An associate professor at Aoyama Gakuin University, researching the intersection of innovative textual and performance practices in 20th and 21st century writing. Corey began translating for research purposes and has since had translations of works by Aoyagi Natsumi, Izumi Chitsugu, Kae Yoshitaka, Makigami Koichi, Nomura Kiwao, and Sato Ayaka, published, exhibited, or staged in Japan and abroad. Forthcoming translations include the poetry collection Done Being Nurtured by Aoyagi Natsumi, to be published by Spite Press in Edinburgh in July 2026, and an essay on Beckett, Heidegger, and textual practice by Akutagawa Prize winner Hosaka Kazushi in Beckett in Japan, published by Bloomsbury in early 2027. A translation of the seemingly impossible to translate novel I Sing Like I Mean It by Noma Prize and Akutagawa Prize winner Yamashita Sumito was completed this month, undertaken by invitation of the author and his editor at Kawade, and is now in search of a publisher. So today Corey's going to be reading a poem by Natsumi Aoyagi Natsumi, from the collection Done Being Nurtured.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, of course, to Ginny for putting on this immense translation presentation. I'm so pleased to be among so many translators I respect, and it's very exciting for me to share what, as you heard, is going to be published as a book this year. It's a translation of Sodatsu no o Yameru by Aoyagi Natsumi, and it's with an Edinburgh publisher who's new. And for those of you out there interested, we'll be beginning a Japan poetry series. So any of you who translate Japanese poetry, I'm sure they'll be looking for manuscripts in the future. But yes, I'm very excited to share this work. I'm going to read two poems from Done Being Nurtured, as I've translated it. And as you might notice from the title, there's been a reluctance to adopt a subject in that title, and that's key, because if I can introduce this collection to you, one very interesting thing about it is that it is a collection based on fieldwork in interactions with insects. And the collection is very interested in the non-human perspective. And as you'll hear from these two poems, the question of to what degree we can shed our anthropocentric tendencies, and to what extent we can enter into a vermiform point of view, is a particular interest of this collection. And the insects that will be appearing are doodlebugs and also cicadas. But in the collection, a butterfly is a very important kind of almost climactic figure as well. So first I'll read an untitled work, which works like a preface in the collection. And because it's poetry, I hope you don't mind me reading the original as well, because I think there's the rhythm, there's the musicality, and also there's the question of how the translator has approached it, I think, as well. So as I said, it's untitled, first of all. Ame wa yama ni nari tsutsu. The rain becoming the mountains. Kaminari ga iki o korosu. Thunder stifling breath. Apuri ga 30 分後に僕は眠ると言った. The app said that I'll sleep 30 minutes later. だけど もう少し粘ってささやく雷を聞く。But I persevere a bit, listen to this murmuring thunder. 声がセミからして Its voice, the cicadas. 雨が止んだ後が山になって大航海を済ませたセミが精一杯鳴く声がする。What comes after the rain becomes mountains, and the cicada, overcoming its great voyage, cries out with all its strength. 鳴くことは喋ることじゃない。Crying out will not equate to speaking. だから尺度を探して僕を見てほしい。And that's why I want you to search for the criterion. I want you to look at me. 雷が鳴いた。The thunder cried out. And then the following poem is one of many recollections of childhood and a situation in which a character who might be a stand-in for the poet may not be, but in any case a child figure, and these perspectives compete with an adult perspective. And the situation is one in which, rather than take soil to create a nest for these doodlebugs, for these arijigoku in Japanese, the child uses melon soda, kona, melon soda no kona, uses the melon soda sachet sweets, so to make a nest. And the curious tension is about whether or not the unmoving, these insects we're waiting to move to see if it really becomes a nest, whether they're mogutteru, whether they're actually crawling in it, burrowing in it, or whether they're just umoreta mama, just buried. Okay? So that's the tension between. Okay. So, melon soda no su, melon soda nest. もう木がないウッドランドの前にある駄菓子屋。At the old-fashioned lolly shop in front of woodland, which no longer has any trees. 僕が小さい頃、木製遊具がそこら中ギシギシになった。The wooden play equipment scattered all over would cry out in squeaks when I was little. 入り口のウッドランドも壁も全部木だから落書きされ放題。Everything from the woodland of the entrance to the walls is made of wood, so free rein for graffiti. 簡単に削れて跡が一生消えないから。It's easily carved and the traces never come off. メロンソーダ10個ください。10 melon sodas, please. そんなに食うか Can you eat that many? 食べない。I can't eat them. そうかい。Oh, really? おじちゃんは奥から10個を出す。The old man takes out 10 packets from within. 僕はポッケから100円玉を出す。I present a 100 yen coin from my pocket. あと10円で豚麺が2つ買えちゃうし、コンビニでも買い物できる。I presented, then instant ramen. I present a 100 yen coin from my pocket, then instant ramen at 10 yen apiece. もう一度。走って帰って、ジャムカップをよくよく洗って、メロンソーダを片っ端から開けて。I rush home, wash a jam jar from top to bottom, and then open the melon soda sachet at one corner. 忘れてた。Oh no, I completely forgot. スマホでカメラ回して映像撮っとこうと記録だからメロンソーダ10個入れます。I was going to turn the camera around on my phone and shoot a video. Tell him 10 melon soda packets. In you go. あり地獄を入れるとあっという間にメロンソーダの砂を潜った。潜ったっけ When you put a doodlebug in, all of a sudden they burrow into the sands of melon soda. Burrowing, was it? 上からかけたから埋もれただけな気もするな。I suspect they were just buried in it because I sprinkled the powder in from above. 映像を見直せばいいんだけど、データがどっか行った。It'd be good if I could review the footage taken, but the data's disappeared somewhere. それからしばらく巣を作り始めると思った。Then I slowly waited for the nest building to begin. 潜ってるか埋もれたまま。Burrowing or just buried. メロンソーダは粒子が粗い粉ジュース。舐めるとしょっぱくてむせた。Melon soda comprises granules of rough juice particles which, when I lick them, make me splutter from the sourness. 砂に海が全部吸われてる。The entire sea gets sucked into the sands. 大海原を覆った砂は傘を増して膨れ上がった。The mass of sands engulfed by high seas rises and swells. 右手ですくって持ち上げ。I scoop it up with my right hand, raise it up. 小指を隙間から平らな机に落とすときれいな小山ができる。Can make a nice little mountain. Oh, I scoop it up with my right hand, raise it up. Can make a nice little mountain when I pour it onto a flat table through the gap by my pinky. アリジゴクはちょうど対照的に巣を作る。The doodlebugs make a nest perfectly symmetrical. 僕と逆さまの場所で生きていて。I am living alongside an upside-down place. 逆さまの餌を取って生きる。Live retrieving upside-down food. 投稿したらメロンソーダに逆さの小山ができていないか見る。Back at school, I check if the little reverse mountain with melon soda is finished. 動かず砂に潜ってるが埋もれたまま。They're burrowing without moving, or just as they are, buried. 先生が言う。The teacher says, 円の軌道が現れ、円を狭め、中心に向かう。A sphere's orbit will appear. The sphere contracts, oriented towards center. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Corey. Okay, we just have one more reader before we go into a break. And this will be Eli K.P. William, who has spent his entire adult life in Japan making a career out of story and language. The only member of the science fiction and fantasy writers of Japan who writes novels in English. He is the author of the Jubilee Cycle trilogy set in a dystopian future Tokyo. He translates Japanese literature, including the Yomiuri Prize-winning novel A Man by Keiichiro Hirano and the best-selling essay collection The Travelling Tree by Michio Hoshino. In recent years, he also writes professionally in Japanese, serving as a bilingual story consultant for a major Tokyo-based video game development studio and contributing short stories to such publications as SF Prologue Wave and the 2025 Hayakawa anthology Fear and SF, Kyofuto SF. His translations, essays and short stories have appeared in Eon, Granta, the Southern Review, Monkey, the Malahat Review, the Japan Times, Reactor, Kyoto Journal, Writer's Digest, Nippon.com, Subaru and more. And today he's going to read from The Travelling Tree by Michio Hoshino. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you very much for inviting me here, Ginny, and also for the introduction, and to everyone else for coming. So as Ginny has just said, I will be reading from The Travelling Tree by Michio Hoshino. And it's a collection of essays that functions as something of a memoir. So to understand the book, it's important to know a little bit, I think, about Michio Hoshino's life. So he was born in Ichikawa City on the edge of Tokyo in Chiba Prefecture. From a young age, he was fascinated with the North, the nature of the North in particular. Initially Hokkaido, but later on his passion for the North transferred over to Alaska. And he became a photographer, and he dedicated his life to both writing essays about and photographing Alaska. He was a successful photographer. He contributed photographs to a variety of Japanese magazines, to global magazines like National Geographic. And then at the age of only 43, he was on a photo shoot in Kamchatka and was tragically killed by a bear. And there's a certain irony to his end, because not only because he was fascinated with the North and with nature, but also because he both wrote about and photographed a lot of bears, and had a certain kind of special affinity for them. So today I'm going to be reading one of his essays. It's called My First Encounter with Alaska, and it functions as like something of origin story for Michio Hoshino. But he takes several stabs in this collection at sort of trying to describe what his origin was, why it is that he became so fascinated with Alaska and decided to move away from Japan, his home, and go to Alaska. As you'll see in the essay, although it is something of an origin story, he seems to deny the whole idea of an origin. Without further ado. My first encounter with Alaska. One day I receive a call from Don Ross. There's a photographer from National Geographic in town, he says. Sounds like he's about to head to the Arctic to shoot the caribou migration. Wants to pick your brain about it. Would you mind going to meet him at his hotel? Name is George Mobley. National Geographic, the most prestigious magazine in America when it comes to history, nature, geography, culture. Landing your work in that fine rag has got to be every photographer's dream. Now here's one of their staff photographers. I bet he's rushing around the globe. Such are the thoughts swirling in my head as I drive downtown to the hotel, when the name George Mobley suddenly rings a bell. It can't be, but I'm almost certain that was his name. Doing a U-turn, I return home and take down a book of photographs from my shelf. It doesn't take a moment to find the page. On it is a picture that calls up old memories, and sure enough, written to the side in small print is George Mobley. Who would have thought that I would meet him like this? In my adolescence, I read all sorts of books, and through them developed a fascination with the wilderness of Hokkaido, which seemed to me at that age like some unimaginably distant land. Eventually, my interest in northern regions shifted to even more distant Alaska. But with no way for me to discover what it was really like there, my curiosity just went on growing unchecked. In the Japan of the late 1960s, even books on Alaska were almost impossible to come by. Then one day, I was in the Kanda secondhand bookshop area, browsing at a store that specialized in Western books, when I came across a collection of photographs of Alaska. With all the other foreign titles lined up on the shelf, who can say why my gaze stopped on that particular book? But there it was, right in front of me, as though awaiting my arrival all along. And from then on, wherever I went, whether to school or anywhere else, it was always in my bag. There's an old saying for this: read a book over till your fingers stain it. Of course, in my case, it wasn't the words, but the photographs that absorbed me. One image called to me with such force that I couldn't help but turn to its page every time I picked up the book. It was an aerial shot of an Inuit village in the Arctic Circle. The gray waters of the Bering Sea, the sinking leaden sky, the bamboo reeds of sunlight shining down through breaks in the clouds. And smack dab in the middle of this, a lone dot of human habitation. The scene was utterly desolate, and I think what first struck me about it was the uncanniness of the light. But over time, it was the village that began to capture my attention. Although I could make out the shape of the buildings, no figures were visible among them. And I wondered what had compelled people to live in such a place, practically at the ends of the earth. Who were they? What sort of thoughts ran through their heads from day to day? Sometimes when I was younger, while gazing absent-mindedly from a train over a city at twilight, I would spot through the window of someone's home a family gathered in happy conversation, possibly having dinner. Always I would keep my eyes fixed on this diorama until the glow of the window passed out of sight. Then my chest would tighten with some surging emotion that I'm not sure what to call. Wonder at these strangers living lives unknown to me. Sadness at existing in the same era without ever having the chance to become acquainted. This feeling was similar to the one that arose when I looked at the picture. The difference in the case of the villagers, however, was that I wanted more than anything to meet them. The caption on the photograph was the name of the village, Shishmaref. I decided I would try sending a letter. But to whom exactly? And to what address? Opening a Japanese-English dictionary, I found the word mayor. For the address, my only option was to add Alaska and America to the village's name. I saw a picture of your town in a book. I would like to visit. I will help out in any way I can, but is there anyone who I could stay with? That was the gist of it, an honest expression of exactly what I was thinking. I can only speculate now how clumsy the wording was. It was the first time I had ever written a letter in English. Time passed and no reply was forthcoming. Not that this surprised me. I hadn't even included a definite address or recipient. And imagine if the letter did reach one of the villagers. Who was going to host someone they had never even met? I soon completely forgot that I had even sent it. Until one day, 6 months later, I returned home from school to find that an envelope had arrived from overseas. A letter from a family in Shishmaref. We got your letter. I talked to my wife about you coming to our house. Summer is the season of the reindeer hunt. We need people to help out. Come anytime. 6 months later, I was on my way to Alaska. After transferring between several small airplanes, the village finally came into view, surrounded by the Bering Sea. Reality merged with the image I had obsessed over, and I kept my face pressed to the glass, overcome by the moment. My sojourn in Shishmaref those 3 summer months at the age of 19 stayed with me ever after. To actually set foot in the village I had viewed from above in the photograph, to hunt bears, seals, and reindeer for the first time, to meet all the villagers beneath the midnight sun. Intense experiences came one after the next, sedimenting in the depths of my soul and leaving me with an abiding interest in the diversity of ways of life. I decided afterwards that I would pursue photography as a profession and returned to Alaska 7 years later, bearing many dreams in my heart. This time my visit would not be so brief. I was expecting to stay 3, no, maybe 5 years, but the arrow of time just flew by. I trekked the pristine slopes and valleys of the Brooks Range that spans the polar regions of the state. I listened to the grinding of great mountains of ice as I voyaged by kayak through Glacier Bay. I paddled an umiak after right whales in the Arctic Ocean. I followed herds of caribou enchanted by their migration. I recorded a year in the life of a bear, gazed up at countless northern lights, crossed paths with wolves, immersed myself in the cultures of many peoples. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed. Somewhere along the way, I had put aside thoughts of leaving and found myself building a house as I tried to put down roots in this land. So was picking up that particular book at that specific time, in that one bookstore, the predestined event that was responsible for my coming to Alaska? The answer, I think, is no. For if you attempt to trace back each moment in your life, all you'll find is a chain of innumerable coincidences stretching off without end, like your reflections in two opposing mirrors. Nevertheless, I did in fact go to the town of Shishmaref after seeing that picture. And there's no denying that a shift took place in my life, as though a new map had been drawn for me. All of which brings me back to the man who took the picture, George Mobley. When I arrive at the hotel, I find my way to his room and knock at the door. Unaware of how much this meeting means to me, George comes to greet me, a smile beaming from his white-bearded face. After we've talked caribou for a while, I take out the old book and begin to tell him the whole story. I'm glad to find his eyes focused intently on mine as he listens. Wow! So my picture changed your whole life? Not exactly. More like it opened up a big opportunity for me. And do you regret it? Just beginning to advance in years, George smiles softly in the depths of his eyes. Life abounds with hidden springs and levers that influence the direction we take, as we pass by countless others from day to day without ever meeting. Yet the primordial sadness this brings is also what leads to the fathomless mystery of our coming together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eli. Okay, well, we'll take a break now, I think. Jeffrey, how long are we going to break for?
You're the MC. How long would you like to break for?
I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or something? Does that sound good?
Sounds good. So
Yeah.
back at 2:50.
2:50?
2:50? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll do so. Okay.
Okay, back at 2:50 then.
Okay, great. That was awesome.
And in part 2, we'll be listening to people read fiction. So the mood will shift from this more introspective first part, and we'll shift more to, what do you call it? I don't know, more maybe dynamic storytelling type shift.
Hold me now closely. Say what you need. Just give me something to believe. I don't know the reason I followed you here. Just looking for something to believe. listen to what you can see, even if you got nothing to believe. Hear what I'm saying, hold me now please. Just give me something to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things that you needed to say. To believe when you loosen the chains that tie up your heart. To take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away, forget where it was. To believe when there's nothing to believe. To believe. To believe. Raise up your head now, look at me true. Give me just half of what I've been giving to you. If I only was smarter, had a little more bread, if things were more quiet here in my head. If you hadn't left me like you did long ago, you wouldn't be sitting here all alone. You can think what you want to, but you can't make me grieve, 'cause you never had nothing for me to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things that I needed to say. To believe when you loosen the chains that tie up your heart. Take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away, forget where it was. To believe when there's nothing to believe. To believe. To believe. closely. Say what you need. Just give me something to believe. I don't know the reason I followed you here, just looking for something to believe. Here if you listen to what you can see, even if you got nothing to believe. Hear what I'm saying. Hold me now, please. Just give me something to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things you needed to say. To believe when you loosen the chains that tie up your heart. To take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away, forget where it was. To believe when there's nothing to believe. To believe. To believe. Raise up your head now. Look at me true. Give me just half of what I've been giving to you. If I only was smarter, had a little more bread, if things were more quiet here in my head. If you hadn't left me like you did long ago, you wouldn't be sitting here all alone. You can think what you want to, but you can't make me grieve, 'cause you never had nothing for me to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things that I needed to say. To believe when you loosen the chains that tie up your heart. Take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away, forget where it was. To believe when there's nothing to believe. To believe. To believe. closely. Say what you need. Just give me something to believe. I don't know the reason I followed you here, just looking for something to believe. Listen to what you can see, even if you got nothing to believe. Hear what I'm saying. Hold me now, please. Just give me something to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things that you needed to say. To believe when you loosen the chains that tie up your heart. To take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away, forget where it was. To believe when there's nothing to believe. To believe. To believe. Raise up your head now. Look at me true. Give me just half of what I've been giving to you. If I only was smarter, had a little more bread, if things were more quiet here in my head. If you hadn't left me like you did long ago, you wouldn't be sitting here all alone. You can think what you want to, but you can't make me grieve, 'cause you never had nothing for me to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things that I needed to say. To believe when you loosen the chains that tie up your heart. Take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away.
Okay,
go in. Okay, everybody.
And we are back.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
You're live.
we're live. Oh, okay. We're already live. Hi, everybody.
What do you want? 3, 2.
Okay. Okay. Here we are for part 2 of today's readings, and change of pace here with fiction. And we're going to start with Adam Sutherland, who grew up in Windsor, England, and has been based in Tokyo since 2009. As of 2013, he has worked as a freelance translator specializing in film subtitles, video games, and catalogues and essays for universities and art galleries. He is drawn to works that deal creatively with nostalgia, the weird, eerie, and the effect of time and place on the psyche. His first literary translation, a collection of 3 short stories by Tomoko Yoshida, who was born in 1934, is scheduled for publication this spring. And today he's going to read an extract from a short story by Tomoko Yoshida.
Hello, everyone. So as Ginny said, I'll be reading an extract from the title story of 3 stories that I've chosen to translate for an upcoming publication from a small indie publisher called Isolari. It's Isolari. The story was written in 1977, and it concerns 2 elderly men, Moke, who is the protagonist, and Nakase, who grew up in close proximity to one another, but didn't really get to know one another properly until they both moved out to Manchuria as settlers and lived over there in the late 1920s, 30s, and 40s. And while they were out there, they fell into working on the black market and got into all sorts of nefarious japes and scrapes. The dynamic between the 2 of them is very skewed in that Moke, the younger of the pair, somewhat idolizes Nakase, and in turn, Nakase, the older of the 2, is domineering, cajoling, and frequently abusive to the younger. It's in 1970s. They're back in Japan now. They're elderly men. Mokehe has just found out that Nakase is dying of lung cancer. And so he decides to make the 3-hour journey on foot from his house to Nakase's to see him one last time. And the story basically takes the form of this journey over there on foot, and while he's walking, he's assailed by memories of their time together, many of them traumatic, harrowing, the things that he saw, etc., etc. So this extract I'll be reading is from about the middle of the story. Moke thumps the corrugated iron lining the path with his fist. It made a stupid, hollow clang. The thin sheets were rusting from the bottom up, the corrosion streaking upwards in lines that, for a moment, reminded him of tongues of flame. Not just flame. In between, in places where the rust blistered up like bark, ready to peel and crumble, other shapes appeared. Something wounded and unmoving, hunched. A headless bird, people tied up, black fluid trickling from hollow eye sockets, merging with the flames. A woman writhing as she crawled, clutching a lump of rotten meat to her chest. The meat glimmering a silver grey. That was all the flies. The child in her arms, a half-melted mess. Overgrown yellow grass lay flattened into lines where feet had trampled through. He caught the stench of rot buried in the iron. Onwards, people marched, tossing things aside, urinating and defecating as they went, anything to avoid falling behind. Others trampling straight through. They left the path of filth, and there, the step. To their rear, the flames, and out in front, yellow soil and yellow grass stretching all the way to the sky. In that moment, he hadn't felt the urge to vomit. He stroked the corrugated iron, took in its scent, deliberately this time. It was sweet, with a faintly acidic bite. Smell of the wind, maybe. Noticing that the iron fence was riddled with small holes, he leaned his face in closer. On the other side was a vacant plot covered in dead grass. The few flashes of green were blades of bamboo. He caught a glimpse of something red. It looked like a flower. He shifted his gaze to a different hole. Beyond the bamboo grass stood a short mochi tree, and above that a large camellia with broad, immaculate crimson flowers. It was right in front of him. It looked close enough to touch, so without thinking he reached out a hand. A harsh scraping sound pulled him up short. Stepping back, he looked down to see flakes of rust dusting his overcoat from the shoulder all the way down to the sleeve. As he brushed them off, he thought of the camellia's soft, dewy petals, about how they'd feel beneath his fingertips. When he looked back at the hole again, there was nothing there. It was just a speck, nothing more. He closed his eyes, and the sky was filled with crimson flowers. The fence rang out with a clang. A child was walking this way, a stick of bamboo in hand, which it was dragging along the corrugated iron fence as it approached. The child got as far as where Moke was standing before coming to a halt. It was a girl, about 5 years old. He didn't move aside, so she just stood there, silent and staring up at him. "What?" he barked. She took a small step back. "You're not allowed to do a wee-wee there." "Just while I'm not, then." "Then what are you doing?" He didn't have an answer. The girl was wearing a navy smock, and underneath red shorts that poked out from below the hem. Her socks stopped just shy of the knee, and between them and her shorts was a narrow strip of bare, soft-looking skin. She took another step back and asked again, timidly this time. "What are you doing then? Mister?" "Go on, piss off home." Moke snarled at her and began walking away. There was already quite some distance between them when he heard her voice again, half singing as if she were reciting a nursery rhyme. "Was he a robber or not? Who's to say? A bad man? Who's to say?" Heard from a distance, the voice could have been a boy or girl's. He's probably already dead. The thought came to him out of nowhere. It was lung cancer after all, and he was old. The whites of Nakase's eyes. So he was dead. Then what? He tried to focus in on the idea, but his thoughts were too hazy and diffuse, and they refused to take shape. Nakase had a good physique. He wouldn't be embarrassing himself, at least. He'd make for a fine-looking corpse. Moke had seen Nakase naked more times than he could count. He used to be fat back in the day, and what with how irritable the summer heat made him, he'd spend all his time at home in the nude. He was forever complaining he couldn't stand the Japanese summers. The hole in Nakase's leg. When Nakase stuck his finger inside, it disappeared up to the middle joint. His finger still in there, he stared Moke dead in the eyes. Nakase had killed a man once, way out on the Manchurian steppe. They drove out there, 3 hours in a truck. It was spring, water everywhere, which made it hard to drive. When they hit the wetland, Nakase cursed and clicked his tongue. They drove on, weaving between the wet patches. They came to a field of poppies, a blanket of orange. Half an hour later, and there was still no end to the things. Probably opium poppies, Moke thought. He didn't say anything. When Nakase pulled him into the passenger seat, he hadn't known what he was getting himself into. He'd been unable to speak ever since the man had been tossed into the truck bed, trussed up like a piece of luggage. Judging by his skin tone and the face of his features, the man looked Japanese. All he did was groan and mumble incoherently, though, so it was hard to say for sure. Didn't look like he had the strength to speak. Every time the truck swerved or jolted, he let out a thin, shrill yelp. Hearing the man's howls, Nakase kept his right hand on the steering wheel as he leaned his body over the passenger seat and reached into the far door pocket with his left hand. When he straightened up, he was holding a gun. He tapped it lightly on the rear window separating the cab from the truck bed. Tap, tap, without turning round, just his wrist moving. The vehicle was more of a converted jeep than a truck, and what with the years and miles on it, the engine noise was deafening. The sound of a gun tapping on glass shouldn't have been audible, but Moke heard it, faint but unmistakable all the same. Tap, tap. The man in the back heard it too. 1 second, the insufferable howling, then a flick of Nax's wrist and he went deadly quiet. Nax owned 2 guns. One, a standard soldier-issue Nambu Type 14, the other a smaller woman's pistol he bought for white Russian emigre. The latter, with its engraved frame and elegant curve to the grip, was unmistakably feminine. Being old and beat up, it also had a fierce recoil, and the one time Nax had let him fire it, Moke landed flat on his arse. "Was think I might let you have this one?" Nax sneered. "It's a bit much for you to handle, eh?" He only said it because he knew Moke was desperate for a gun of his own. There's no way in hell he would have parted with a specimen that sleek. He was always playing with it, rolling it around in his hands. He'd moan about it from time to time. "The aim shot to shit," he'd say. "Damn thing's only good for point-blank range or committing suicide." But he'd never carried the bigger one around with him. At the top of a hill, wooden posts stuck out from the ground. As they drove closer, Moke saw that each post had smaller sticks nailed across it. 2 of them, one horizontal, the other diagonal. The same Greek Orthodox marker he'd seen on white Russian graves. A single Latin cross stood among them. At the foot of the hill, Naxis stopped the vehicle and rolled the man off the truck bed and onto the ground. He did it all himself without giving Moke orders. The man didn't even flinch. Could have been dead already. Naxis pressed the gun muzzle to the man's head, but he didn't pull the trigger. After waiting like that for a few minutes, he removed the gun and looked at Moke, who was over by the truck, diagonally to Naxis' rear. He didn't need to turn around and look for him. Even with his back turned, he'd known exactly where Moke was and what he was doing. Still crouched, Naxis swiveled to face him. Moke's breath caught in his throat. The gun, still nestled in Naxis' large palm, was now in front of his chest. The muzzle pointed straight at him. Naxis' face was dark and blotchy. He opened his mouth in the shape of a smile and exhaled roughly, laughing, only his eyes still as they bore relentlessly into him. Moke tried to keep himself from swaying. He gripped hold of the truck's side step behind him, saw his own body jerk up and backwards like a shrimp, then slide, crumpling at the foot of the truck. The scene flashing before his eyes ad nauseum. He just wanted it over with. He felt like he was about to throw up. On the way back, the poppy field behind them for the second time that day, Naxa broke the silence. "Nothing's ever as much fun as you think it'll be. Well, for me, for looking forward to it." Moke, trying to keep the tremors at bay, replied in the most composed voice he could muster. "What do you reckon he did? Must have been a good reason to have someone bumped off in secret like that. Think he was a peddler like you. Poor bastard was Japanese, right? Call me, I'll bet." Naxa kept quiet as he reached over with his left hand and pulled out the gun, then tapped it on the glass behind them. The step yawning all around. That far out, flowers didn't bloom jumbled up together. They bloomed in patches. Nothing but poppies in one spot, or peonies in another. A short spring had given way to summer almost immediately, and they were all in bloom, a sweet scent hanging across the entire steppe. On the way back, the truck rattling along smoothly. Moke felt his heart sink. He didn't fancy his chances in a fist fight. Besides which, Naxa had the gun. He was terrified of saying the wrong thing and setting him off again. He pretended not to notice Naxa tapping on the glass, just took a slow, deep breath and said the most anodyne thing he could think of. "Sure be nice to show the folks back home this scenery, eh?" He ran through it in his head a couple of times before saying it. Thought with any luck that might be the end of it. Idiot. Naxa screamed at him and clobbered him full pelt across the head, sent his skull ricocheting from the passenger window. The pain put paid to any thoughts of the scenery. Naxa snorted. "Dunderhead." A new word he picked up on the continent. "Fucking dunderhead," he said. "That's what you are. Shit for brains, dunderheaded dolt." Supposing he'd snapped. Killed Nakase right there and then. Nakase was greasy in those days. Overweight. He didn't yet have the hole in his leg. Barely a scratch on him. Would have made for a boring corpse. Moke had once seen a dead Manchurian floating in a ditch. Big, corpulent fellow, not on handsome features. Looks a bit like Nakase, he'd thought, but it turned out it was just the bloat setting in. No, he was better off with a hole in his leg. Nakase's corpse, with his leg with a hole in it. Moke'd end up sticking his finger in there, most probably. But Nakase found it humiliating, he knew. There was no reason for him to. It was a good thing, having a hole in your leg. Meant you weren't just any old corpse. You're a corpse with a hole in it. And that was worth more. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, now Margaret Mitsutani is going to read for us. Margaret has lived in Japan since the mid-1970s and was a finalist for the National Book Award for her translation of Yoko Tawada's Scattered All Over the Earth, and winner of the National Book Award for her translation of Tawada's The Emissary. She also translates Japan's 1994 Nobel Prize laureate Kenzaburo Oe. And today she's going to read from one of my favorite authors, which is Yoko Tawada. So please come give a big hand for Margaret.
No, I think I can manage. Okay, let's see. Is there a mic here?
There is a chair if you like.
No.
So if you stand here.
No.
It's magic.
Magic. Then you're in the right place.
Can you hear me? Okay, that's good. Okay. I wasn't planning to read today, actually, but apparently some people who were supposed to read couldn't come, and here I am. So, and so actually, this isn't my book. This is Ginny's book of Ginny's copy of Suggested in the Stars. And this is the second volume of a trilogy that Tawada wrote. The first one was Scattered All Over the Earth, and then this is volume 2, and the third volume, Archipelago of the Sun, was published, I think, last year. So, but I don't know if any of you have read any of them, but just a short introduction. The first volume begins when a budding linguist, a budding Danish linguist, is lying on the couch watching TV, holding a cushion. This is sort of his standard pose. His name is Knut, and he's watching television. He sees, he happens to tune in a program about people who have lost their countries, and they're people who are railing on and on about having been, citizens of the former East Germany, and it doesn't exist anymore. And then in the middle of all this strange girl, young woman called Hiroko J appears, and she's speaking a very strange language. And of course, being a linguist, he's very interested in that. And the word Japan is never used in the novel at all, but it becomes pretty clear that she came from Japan, but Japan has somehow been just sunk in the ocean or just disappeared somewhere. And she's looking for someone who speaks her native language. And the language that she speaks that fascinates Knut so much is a language she made up herself called Panska, which stands for Pan-Scandinavian. And she has traveled, she came to Scandinavia as a foreign student and has moved around within Scandinavia. And so she's made this language that all Scandinavians can pretty much understand. It's not Swedish or Norway or Norwegian or Danish, but it's people from all three countries can understand it. And so my first problem in translating this first language was how to translate Panska, because it has to be. It's a kind of broken Danish or broken. It's a non-native speaker language, but it has to be interesting enough for someone like Knut to be fascinated with it. So what I did was I sort of followed the structure of Japanese and pulled the verb to the end of the sentences. And for instance, when you're when someone says, "Isn't this so?" and you say, "No, it isn't." In Japanese, that tends to be "chigau," and so I translated that as different, and that sort of thing. And well, I guess I'd first like to read a sort of sample of in which Panska appears. Another thing, I wrote Panska all in lowercase, and this was a recommendation from a friend of mine who's a retired reporter for the Asahi Shimbun and who studies Georgian as a hobby. And Georgian, like Japanese, doesn't have uppercase. So she said, "Well, why don't you write it all in lowercase, and then it'll." I still had my back turned, but I felt warmth moving through the air and figured it must be Knut. This is Hiroko's narration. Just as I'd thought, right behind my earlobe, I heard his voice. "What did you say just now?" "Good morning." "Seems awfully long. How many syllables does it have?" "Good morning only, not. Environment also. Good morning scenes. Good morning memories." "I've got a few of my own," says Knut. "I used to bite into a piece of bread, then suddenly remembered to say good morning. My mother was always scolding me for talking with my mouth full. When I was in a hurry, I'd jump on my bike with a pastry in my mouth, then look back and yell, 'Good morning,' except it came out more like Were you late for school too? Did you bike there?" "Bicycle forbidden." "So did your parents drive you to school?" "Parents' car also forbidden." "Why?" "Upper class pretension forbidden." "So your country didn't have an upper class?" "Very high class we had. The sun. Power of the sun." "You mean solar energy?" Knut sounded flabbergasted. I heard Susanoo chuckle. Susanoo is another character. Or so I thought. Couldn't be, but the trace of laughter that grazed my ears like a slight breeze was neither Nanook's voice nor Knut's. I almost turned around but stopped myself. I'd go on talking this way without looking at him. I felt like I was onto something. This is Susanoo is the character that they track down at the end of the first volume, and he is supposedly a speaker of Hiroko's native language, except he has some kind of aphasia. He doesn't talk at all, and so Hiroko is always talking to him, trying to get him to talk. And so here she talks to him about the image of the sun. The image of the sun might be the key. That single word, taiyo, might not be enough, though. I'd take my time and see if I could smoke out whatever was hidden in Susanoo's mind. I began by listing everything I could think of that had to do with the sun. The spherical goddess who shows her round face above the horizon, over water, over land, over the mountains, shining the color of an orange or a pomegranate, to awaken the sleeping birds, to bring green back to the leaves that were black in the night, to return reds, blues, and yellows to the flowers, to warm the earth, to coax people outside. "What did you just say?" Canute asked, very eager to know. "Long name for the sun." "Does it really have such a long name?" "Different. My invention." And then Nanook, another character, Nanook is from Greenland. He's an Eskimo, and they meet him in the first volume because, when he was studying in Greenland, lots of people mistook him for Japanese, and so he decided to make himself a Japanese identity, and he created another identity for himself called Tenzo, and he became a sushi chef, and he pretended to be Japanese. So he appears here, and he's being kind of obnoxious in this part of the story. Nanook, the know-it-all, broke in. "There's a goddess in Japanese with a long name," he said. "I remember reading about her. Starts with Ama, what was it? Amaterasu Omikami." "That's right. The Ama at the beginning means rain, right? As in Amagasa, umbrella." "No." "Mild flavor then, as in Amakuchi curry?" "No." "Like the Ama in the name of that island, Amamiyoshima?" "No." "Ama the word for none?" "No." While finding Nanook's vocabulary genuinely impressive, I was starting to get irritated. He was so intelligent, yet rather than studying, here he was playing doctor, so self-satisfied, looking down on us. What a waste. And what has happened in this part of the story, actually, this second volume suggested in the stars, she's incorporated it into a TV drama series by Lars Van Trier called The Kingdom. Do you remember The Kingdom Hospital? It's a series about this creepy hospital that was built over some land where that was what? Did you remember? There was a place where they were making and dyeing cloth or something, and there are all these ghosts that appear in the hospital. It's really weird. And I've heard that Stephen King did a version of it, but it's a really strange hospital, and there, ghosts of children appear in the elevator. It's really weird. And in the basement of this hospital, there are two dishwashers who are played by young people with Down syndrome, and they appear in Tawada's novel along with. There's a Swedish doctor. The hospital is in Denmark, but there's a Swedish doctor working at this hospital who just hates the Danes. And there's one scene where he's looking across at Denmark and says, and he says something, and the subtitles say Danish scum, but apparently it's something much. The meaning is much stronger than that. And he also appears in this novel, and I really like the boy who has Down syndrome is called Munun, and he appears as one of the narrators, and so does in the series. It's Dr. Helmer. Tawada has changed it to Velmer. It could have been Belmer or Velmer, but I chose the V for it. But the two dishwashers have Down syndrome, and in the novel they have made up their own language. People with Down syndrome have long tongues. They're enlarged tongues, and so it's explained in the book that they make this language. They add extra syllables onto the ends of words, or they give themselves extra words for their extra long tongues to deal with. And in the original, the language that they make for themselves is just an addition of repetition of the last syllable of the word of the word. So if it's yondara would be yondararara or something like that. But if you do that in English, it sounds as though they're stuttering. So to make this, to make their own language, I had them use rhyming words. And at the very beginning of this, Munun is with his companion Vita, who also has, she's the girl in Lars van Trier's drama who has Down syndrome, whose real name was Vita. So I think Toada just took that name here, and they speak in rhymes. And that day, Munun had, while he was washing the plates, he saw something mysterious on the plate that told him that his brother would be coming. And there's some kind of bond between Susanoo, the character I mentioned earlier, and Munun. They're brothers. It's not clear how that works exactly, but he's telling Vita about that. So this is rather short. What's wrong, Bong? Asked Vita, putting her hand on my arm. I read the plate, mate. What did it say, Pei? My brother other's coming today. Your brother other? You have a brother other? Seems I do, boo. And he's coming today. Today? How do you know, Go? I saw the plate, mate. It said so there, Care? That's right, White. He's coming from Arles. Arles? Where's that cat? In France, chance. No matter how many plates I wash-quash, the past is always there. It's always Arles. And there's just one more passage that I'd like to read. This is Dr. Velmer, and he's talking to Munun. Dr. Velmer is a very unpleasant sort of person, and he's a Dane he's a Swede in Denmark, and he hates the Danes, and he's complaining about that to Munun. So let's see. Velmer told me he was too busy to straighten up the room, but he just sat at the table like a boy in school and talked to me while I worked. Do you sometimes feel like an outsider? He asked. No, never. I answered that one right away. By outsider, he must mean one of those motorcycle guys with leather jackets and greasy, slicked-backed hair. I can't even ride a bicycle, and I don't look good in black either. Really? Never? He said. You're lucky. I often feel isolated, alienated, especially during meetings, when everyone's sitting around the table laughing and talking. It makes me angry, the way they all pretend not to notice that practically everything around them is wrong. When I point this out, they all roll their eyes as if I were a real nuisance. They drive me outside their circle. Everyone in a circle, that's Denmark. I tried hard to understand what he meant. So, in Sweden, is everyone in a square? I asked. He laughed out loud and his belly jiggled. He doesn't look fat, but he has plenty of lard stored in his tummy.
That was amazing. I'm totally in awe of Margaret's translation abilities, really. I mean, the way she came up with these other languages, it's absolutely amazing. Brilliant. And so next we have, I just suddenly realized, I'm not quite sure, where is he? Kalao. Kalao's there, right in front of me. I'm not quite sure how you say your surname. Is it Almoni? Almoni. Okay, Kalao Almoni, who is a Japanese-English literary translator based in Kawasaki, Japan. His translations include the work of Fuminori Nakamura, Taihi Saihate, Shinya Tanaka, and does he say his name? Jose Ando. Born and raised in Kailua, Hawaii. Kalau completed his BA in Comparative Literature at Brown University and MA in East Asian Languages and Literatures at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. He is a 2025 National Endowment for the Arts Translation Fellow. And today he's going to read from Jackson Alone by Jose Andor.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Ginny, and thank you for hosting us, Jeffrey. This is such a lovely space. My name is Kalau, and today I'm going to be reading a little bit from Jackson Alone by Jose Andor. So the English translation just came out in January of this year, but the Japanese came out 3 years ago now, 2022. And this was Ando-san's debut work. So this is a novel that follows 4 mixed race, black, Japanese, gay men as they switch places, because no one can tell them apart, obviously, to get revenge. So I'm going to be reading from the opening of the text, so you don't really need too much background information, and you're going to kind of learn about some of the bad things that happen. So I do also want to say that there is there's some sexual assault, there's some revenge porn in this reading, so if that's good, so just be warned that it might get a little tough, especially at the end. The cocoa skin, the devilish eyes, too big and too bright, the limbs like a panther's. Jackson knew the moment he saw the video that the man tied to the bed was him. He didn't remember it, and he knew there were tons of people in this world who looked like him. But this was Japan, and here in Japan, it was Jackson alone who looked like that and was treated this way. That morning, the temperature had suddenly dropped, and since it felt like fall, Jackson pulled on a long-sleeve t-shirt before biking to work. The shirt was from a brand he didn't recognize, but he was almost certain his company dress code said he could wear whatever he wanted, so long as it wasn't from a rival sportswear brand. On a spacious plot of reclaimed land sat 2 corporate-looking buildings, an office tower that loomed over the entire area, and another, smaller building that looked like the first building's child. That smaller building, the Staff Fitness Center of Athletius Japan's headquarters, was where Jackson worked. He spent all day in there giving massages. His schedule was packed that morning. The company basketball team's off-season had just ended in August, and the players were now back in full swing. His first appointment was with the team's forward, a man called Zen. For 60 minutes, Jackson tore into Zen's muscle fibers, shocked by just how quickly they recovered from his touch. All Jackson had to do was run his fingers down Zen's back 2 or 3 times, and his muscles would go from being shrunk stiff with disuse to sucking up blood and swelling with each beat of Zen's heart. At a certain point during the session, Zen asked Jackson, "What did you want to be when you were a teenager?" "I just really wanted to party," Jackson said. "Did you ever think about becoming an athlete?" "No, never." "Why not?" "Because I found out about partying." "Too bad. I bet you'd have been good." "No, you're way more built for this than I am." Jackson thought this, but he didn't say it aloud. Just continued to knead his fingers into Zen's muscles. And the conversation ends yet again, Zen thought. It always stops when we get to Jackson's turn, doesn't it? He's unreadable. That was the impression Jackson left on Zen. What did Zen know about Jackson? He was half Japanese and half some kind of African. He used to run track. He'd modeled. He might be gay. All this Zen had heard not from Jackson himself, but secondhand, from the rumors his teammates passed around. Maybe Jackson could have been a professional athlete, Zen thought, or a professional model, or at least worked at a more gay-friendly business. It was strange that he was here of all places, at the Athletius Fitness Center, massaging people. The fitness center staff were not technically employees of Athletius, and Zen and the other athletes used the facility for only a small part of the year. So presumably Jackson mostly worked on the full-time office staff. They probably complained to Jackson about routine aches and pains, ones that were impossible to tell apart from the normal processes of aging, then just returned to their desk jobs. His days must have consisted of that and just that over and over again. There were people who talked, who said Jackson had become a massage therapist only because he was gay and just wanted an excuse to touch men. But Zen knew that wasn't right. He could feel the restraint in Jackson's hands as they made their way down his back. Zen occasionally slept with men too, but he planned to marry a girl and raise children one day. To Zen, sex with men was the same as S&M or threesomes. It was just another category of porn. He never had a problem finding someone to sleep with and wasn't really looking for a special someone at the moment. They never did get into anything personal, but since neither of them was pure Japanese, they still found plenty to talk about. After the session, they added each other online and parted ways. For the rest of the morning, Jackson gave massages, and Zen joined team meetings. At noon, they saw each other again at the food court. It was packed. Jackson ordered chicken breast and grain tacos with 25 grams of protein and soup, then hurried to grab an open seat by the window. The fitness center staff all wore Athletius gear, so everyone looked like some sort of athlete, but the real athletes could be easily identified by their sense of superiority. They held court in the center of the cafeteria, their table so messy it looked like they'd been there for hours. That was where Jackson spotted Zen again. Their glances were out of sync though, so whenever Zen looked at Jackson, Jackson was turned away. This only reaffirmed Zen's impression of Jackson. He really was unreadable. By lunchtime, the clouds had cleared and yesterday's full-blown summer heat had returned. Jackson took off his long-sleeve shirt and changed into his Athletius attire before he began crunching on his tacos. The food dried out his mouth. He downed each bite with soup, and after clearing his plate in less than 10 minutes, he changed the song on his AirPods. Suddenly, he remembered the feeling of Zen's back. Though hours had passed, the sensation came alive in his fingers again and felt so real. Zen didn't see Jackson get up from the table because he was too distracted by his teammates chattering. They were having a field day, one-upping each other with crude, gross-out stories. This girl once barfed up an expensive risotto dinner on someone's bed on their first date, and it looked exactly the same as when it was on her plate. A former classmate's mom DM'd someone a nude, and so on, until the topic turned to Zen's profile pic on a dating app. It was a photo of him on a mountain with, the team captain sneered, an incredibly unimpressive view behind him. Do you understand what this photo is saying about you? The captain spoke gleefully, bringing his face close to Zen's phone and prodding at it. Girls will judge your taste, man. Look at this place. Would any girl want you to take her there? He spoke like a talk show host would to a studio audience, explaining something everyone should already know. His lackeys chortled. Zen grew embarrassed but joined his team in laughter, all the while imagining what everyone else in the cafeteria must have thought of them. Probably that they were boring as hell. The other team members got in on the action, adding their own commentary. Yeah, it's a lame photo, Zen. And what's with your eyes? They're half closed. Why are you giving a thumbs up? Oof, yeah, this is no good. Let's take a new one for you. According to the research from some American university, you get more matches if you're holding a drink. They say if you have friends in the picture, the number of girls who think you're trustworthy increases by 20%. Don't worry, I'll get in the picture with you. Don't show my face though, it should just be yours. The captain lifted his phone and readied the camera. All right, don't say cheese. When the shot was in focus, the camera picked up something behind Zen. Thrown over the back of an empty chair was a lone shirt. In the seemingly random black and white pattern on its back, one could just make out a faint square. Blank, and the square would dissolve back into the pattern. What is that? The phone's reading something in the pattern on that shirt. It just looks like some streetwear design. Who was sitting there? Oh, it was Jackson. Huh. Look at the shirt. Fancy. Is it? That depends on what the link's to, no? It's probably just the brand's Insta or something. Check it out. Still posing for the photo with a cup of coffee in his hand, Zen waited for this whole thing to end. The captain stared at his phone screen, not saying a word. The teammates on either side of him leaned their heads in close. Is this a promo video? It's a little excessive for that. Yeah, excessive. It's kinda gay. They laughed it off awkwardly, waiting for the next scene to play, but the video didn't cut away from the man tied to the bed. Who's making money off this super gay branding? If this kind of thing actually sold product, our company would be all over it. I bet whoever thought this up must be real proud of themselves. Wait a minute. This guy in the video? Is that Jackson? At Jackson's name, Zen stood up from his chair automatically, and he spoke, maintaining perfect calm. Apparently he was a model before he worked here. I bet it's for some brand he used to work for. Those who'd seen the video stared hard at Zen like some sort of alien life form had taken his place. This? The captain set the smartphone down in the middle of the table, and the team members resumed their deliberation. Oh, he was that kind of model? Modeling? This isn't modeling. We've got another name for this kind of work. Work? More like fun. Fun? You gotta be real sick to find this fun. What kind of joke is this? Why would he wear something like that to work? Maybe it's also part of some sex game? Should we report this? Is this sexual harassment? HR would faint if they saw this. An emotional consensus ran through the team like an electric charge. The fitness center staff around them had grown somewhat numb to the team's ruckus. A lone dispatch worker focused on his meal despite the distinctive squeak of the athlete's shoes against the cafeteria floor, giving him goosebumps. A pair of retail employees from the Athletia shop continued scrolling on their phones, paying them no mind. The head of sales, who'd brought some underlings with him to lunch, raised the volume of his voice so he didn't get drowned out. The underlings nodded along exaggeratedly to show him that it was okay, they were still listening. But everyone from the fragments that they'd picked up thought the same thing. Obnoxious as these guys are, maybe they're on to something interesting this time. The team noticed that they started to draw the attention of everyone around them, and that just got them more worked up. What's with this Immortan Joe mask? Yeah, look, there's a tube coming out of it, and it's connected to his ass. I know what this is. It's a kind of BDSM thing. It's called man-howling. That's not a tube, it's a cord. The thing in his mouth is a mic, and there's a speaker in his ass. If he makes any noise, it'll play inside him, and his whole body will work like a speaker. Then he'll make even more noise because of the pain. That repeats, and it turns into hardcore feedback. It's super dangerous. What the fuck? Apparently it's super popular now. Popular where? Overseas. That sounds dangerous. Yeah, it's probably dangerous. I mean, it looks like it hurts pretty bad. Fuck, look at how twisted up his abs are. It's like he's got an alien growing in there. Damn it, this is too good. When I think about how someone somewhere seriously thought up this kind of thing, it's just too funny. I gotta respect it. I could never come up with this, let alone try it. Either his head's not on straight or he's got the body of a beast. This pisses me off. I mean, let's say he's doing this for fun. That means this guy's hiding who he really is and touching our bodies every day with that smug fucking face. I can put up with a normal homo, but this is freak territory. Zen's eyes shot to the exit. He could sense that he wouldn't alter his demeanor even if Jackson returned. And then it hit him. That feeling he had about Jackson, his unreadability, it might have been a sort of warning. Will you airdrop me the vid? Scan it yourself. No way, I might get hacked. Fine, I'm sending it to you and you and you. Oh shit, I sent it to the wrong person. Oh well, careful what you click on. Several phones vibrated and soon almost everyone in the food court had watched the video. What is this? Revenge porn? No, apparently he's into it. Apparently this was his old job. A body shouldn't move that way. Is he gonna die? Isn't this dangerous? It can't be that dangerous. I mean, if he wasn't fine, how could he? I'm gonna stop there. Thank you guys very much.
Jackson alone. It's such a great novel, that one. Thank you, Kalao. And next we have Louise Heel Kawai. And she has been a Japanese English literary translator since 2006. Her translations include a variety of mystery and literary fiction, notably bestsellers The Honjin Murders by Seishi Yokomizo and The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa, which was also named Honor Book in the 2023 Global Literature in Libraries YA Translated Book Prize. Other authors she has translated include Mieko Kawakami, Seiichi Matsumoto, and Ryo Shimamoto. In 2025, she was awarded the Lindsley and Masao Miyoshi Translation Prize by the Donald Keene Center of Japanese Culture for her translation of The North Light by Hideo Yokoyama. Louise is also a keen actor, and her involvement in theatre has led to translation of play scripts for the New National Theatre Tokyo. Louise comes from Manchester in the UK and currently resides in Yokohama. And today she's going to read for us from First Love.
First Love by
Ryo Shimamoto. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. I was originally asked by Ginny to read something very light because I was going to be ending the program today. But as there is someone else ending the program, I've taken the opportunity to read something very heavy. Apologies in advance for that. I hope it's not going to offend or upset anybody. But having just heard Kalao's reading, I think we're fine. This book won the Naoki Show in 2018, and I translated it, and it came out just over a year ago at the end of 2024. Let me just I do need to set the scene a little bit for this, so I'm sorry, I'll try to do it as fast as possible. I'm just going to read the blurb and say, upon being arrested for the gruesome murder of her father, college student Kanna Hijiriyama tells the police it's up to you to find the motive. Amidst the media frenzy about the woman too beautiful to be a killer, clinical psychologist Yuki Makabe is asked by Kanna's lawyer to counsel the young woman as her trial approaches. Yuki slowly uncovers the dark history behind the relationships in Kanna's life, with her father, her mother, and her first love, and discovers shocking inconsistencies in Kanna's defense. Okay, winner of the prestigious Naoki Prize, First Love is part psychological drama, part legal thriller. So, but it's a lot more than that, I would say. What this doesn't mention is that Dr. Yuki Makabe, sorry, the name right, yes, Makabe, it is trying really hard to get something out of Kanna to find out what the motive is, but there's very little forthcoming. The young woman, she's only 22, is pretty traumatized, and it's really hard to get anything out of her. The father, who she allegedly stabbed, is a fairly well-known painter, Naoto Hijiriyama. And he also works at a local art college to make extra money. As we all know, creative types don't often make enough to live. So that was his job. She tries really hard to get things out of her, and she's recently discovered that back when Kanna was about 5th or 6th grade of elementary school, she used to pose for her father in life drawing classes that her father held at home, not at the college where he taught, but extra life drawing classes that he held at home. And she says, it was fine. There was nothing inappropriate. I was fully dressed. It was okay. But Dr. Makabe is a little worried about this. And when she discovers that Kanna's mother was not present during these classes, it really sends up some red flags for her. We're about halfway through the book, and she finally has discovered an ex-student who was present at these classes. The ex-student is now a potter, I believe, living up in Nagano-ken, but she decides she's going to go and visit and see if she can find any more information out. She's accompanied by a man called Tsuji, who is her editor. Apparently, they're also trying to make a book about, as you do, a book about this serial killer, and her publisher's encouraging her to do that. And the editor has volunteered to go up to Nagano to help interview the ex-student. So that's where the book starts. They've arrived and they're drinking tea with the ex-student. All right. What kind of painting did you do while you were at college? Tsuji asked, bringing the conversation very naturally around to the crucial period. I did a lot of landscapes. I didn't really paint people that much. And I was always into abstract art. Were you able to choose which one to focus on, or did you have to study everything, I asked. I'm sorry, I should have said Makabe. Dr. Makabe is the first-person narrator. Excuse me, I didn't make that clear. Or did you have to study everything, I asked. I tried. Namba grimaced a little. Honestly, I struggled a bit with figure drawing. I even participated in some extra life drawing classes. Since he'd uttered the magic words, I carefully placed my teacup down in front of me. From your friend Shimizu-san, we heard that you participated in Naoto Hijiriyama's drawing circle, I said. He blinked a little before replying. Yes, but I only went twice. I heard you're working on a book or something related to his murder. I'm not sure if I have any important or useful stories to tell. Well, just hearing about those two occasions would be informative enough, I said. For example, what kind of advice did Hijiriyama-san give you? Or was there anything else that stuck with you? One thing I recall, I'll never forget, was him saying that most students have very loose standards. Something along the lines of, oh, that'll do, that'll be enough. He told us, if you think you've observed your subject properly, then examine it at least 10 more times. That's how he looked at the world, which is why he was able to paint such exquisitely detailed pictures. He really changed my outlook. 10 times is a lot, remarked Tsuji. Can you recall the ratio of male to female students participating? I continued. Oh, they were all men, he said. Hijiriyama-sensei had a policy of only personally instructing men. He said women were too much trouble to deal with. Nanba opened and closed the lid of the cast-iron teapot as he spoke. There was a brief scraping of metal on metal. I'll make more tea, he said, getting up again. I called after him. Do you happen to have any work from those drawing sessions? Drawings? Yes, I think I do. He looked thoughtful. In the end, I didn't finish any paintings, so I don't have any oil on canvas, but I still have some of my sketchbooks from that time. I thought they might be helpful for inspiration. Sorry, yes, I have over 10 of them, I think. Could you give me a little time to look for them? Tsuji and I nodded. He hurried up the stairs to the upper floor. We exchanged looks. I had a growing sense of remorse that perhaps I'd been too prejudiced about the drawing circle. Namba's footsteps slowly descended, and he appeared with a large beige-coloured sketchbook in his hand. These sketches are not something I usually show people, he said, brushing the dust off the cover. I was still a student, so they're a little embarrassing. His tone was of someone ashamed by his own immaturity, but nothing to make us suspicious about the contents. Tsuji took the sketchbook anyway. I'd like to take a look, he said, opening it. Oh, you're quite talented, he continued as he flipped through the pages. But then he stopped. This one is... All of a sudden there was something agitated about his manner. Is something wrong? Namba asked, puzzled. I also peered over at the pages. There was a drawing of a girl who looked a lot like Kanna, wearing a dress that faintly revealed the outline of her body. However, it wasn't a chair or a wall that she was leaning against. It was a man's naked back. The two were sitting back to back, propping each other up. I remembered what Kanna had said about the drawing circle during our interview. There had been some expressions that sounded a little odd to me. I realised that I'd picked up on her discomfort, perhaps unconsciously, and that it had led me to this point. She'd said, "But when my body started to get heavy or I got tired, it was harder to move." In the drawing, Kanna was staring vaguely into space, and that look was exactly what I'd seen through the glass partition at the detention centre. It was Tsuji who regained his composure first. This man is completely naked, right? What about underwear?" To which Namba responded without hesitation, "Nude models usually don't cover up. But the composition of this photo was arranged so he was out of the sight line of the child model. Thanks to that, we were able to compare every detail of the two bodies, including the difference in scale of their respective body parts. It was a great learning experience." Namba's tone remained unchanged from before, but now his features, which until now had read "nice young man," began rapidly to distort before my eyes. Is this sort of thing common?" he added hurriedly. "I'm not very familiar with modelling protocol, so I admit I did find it a bit strange." He seemed to have picked up on our criticism, and he was now countering by acting surprised. "You do know this model wasn't some random girl," he went on. "She was Hijiriyama-sensei's daughter. Back then, everyone just believed this was what art was like, especially in the case of an artist like Hijiriyama-sensei." Kanna might have believed that too, that this was just how art was, I pointed out. Uncomfortable, Namba took back his sketchbook and closed it. "Oh, I apologise if we've said something to offend you, especially after your kind cooperation," said Tsuji politely, bowing his head. I also apologised, and then looked Namba straight in the eye. "If you don't mind, could we borrow that sketchbook? I would like to show it to the lawyer for the defence and see if it can be submitted as evidence for the trial." As soon as Namba heard the word trial, he looked terrified and clammed up. "It would be more difficult for us to ask those who participated in the drawing sessions over a long period of time," I continued. "We feel that your testimony from the point of view of an outside observer could be the greatest help to us." "I'm sorry, but I can't do that." I was taken aback by the strength of his refusal. "I was shocked when I heard that Hijiriyama-sensei had been murdered," Namba continued. "It was also shocking to me that his daughter was the killer. But to be honest, I feel sorry for his wife. I only attended twice, but she would return home when the lesson was over and serve tea and homemade food. She'd listen to my stories. She really was a beautiful and kind person. And now she's lost her husband and her daughter's a murderer. It must be awful for her. So I don't want to stir things up anymore and cause her more distress." I almost gasped aloud. In my mind, fragments of the different stories were starting to connect. A mother who politely served home-cooked food to the young men examining, with 10 times the usual level of observation, her young daughter propped up against the body of a naked man. What could be more grotesque than that? An awkward silence followed, which Tsuji broke by getting out his cell phone. "We should be going. I'll call a taxi." "Oh, just go out and turn right. There's a bus stop. You can get back to the station from there." Namba's affable tone was back. We thanked him and quickly headed for the door. As we were putting on our shoes at the entrance, he took a deep breath and spoke. "I don't think my drawings will be of any use." I looked straight at him and answered, keeping my tone gentle. "That little girl you sketched back then, she might be saved by your drawings. They're important evidence." He fell silent, so I handed him my business card. We said our goodbyes and stepped out into a flurry of snow. This is the same part, but I'm just going to jump because they talk about other things for a while. Eventually, Tsuji spoke up. "Makabe-sensei," he said with a little hesitation, There's something I'd like to ask you. Yes, I said, raising my head and meeting his gaze. His expression was tense. My question is, how much? He said. What I mean to say is that what we heard just now from Namba about those life drawing sessions is clearly morally problematic, but what I mean is, how much of a psychological wound would it be? The only contact with the male model was with his back. Namba said that there was care taken, that his nudity wasn't visible to her. There were no sexual poses, and nobody was touching her. Strictly speaking, she was only being observed. How much of an emotional or psychological scar would that leave? What I'm wondering is, how serious would society consider what we've just seen? I can't judge. I wanted to respond immediately, but my mind felt as if it was swirling with sediment. I closed my eyes. I'd wait for it to settle. I'm going to get some sleep. Let's talk about this later. And then just a little bit more when they do talk about it later. You mentioned something to me about gaze earlier, how Kana was only being observed. You asked me how much of a scar that would have left. Tsuji seemed relieved. Yes, that's right. I really wanted to hear your opinion about it. Well, if an individual experiences a sexual gaze on a regular basis, it's traumatic for them, but it's difficult to prove. For example, if they went to therapy, it would be enough for the patient to state that they were a victim of this behavior. By validating their feelings, by empathizing with them and helping them deal with each of their emotions, the counselor is able to help their client deal with those feelings in the future. However, when it comes to proving all this in a court of law, well, it's difficult. And it's possible she didn't even understand that she was the subject of a sexual gaze, he said. Doesn't matter whether she realized it or not. I don't believe a young girl can be fully aware that she's being looked at in a sexual manner, but the one thing she does know is that there's something creepy about it that makes her feel uncomfortable and anxious. She might feel permanently unsafe. It's only when she grows up and actually experiences sex that these feelings have a name. Oh, that's why they were looking at me like that, etc. As I finished speaking, I felt an odd trembling in the tips of my fingers. That sounds like an authentic tale, Tsuji said. I suppose it's because you regularly come into contact with women like that. When I was a child, my father would often go to other Asian countries on business, rather like Kanna's father. He'd be away a month or two at a time. Yeah? He'd pay for underage girls there. Child prostitution. Repulsed by my words, Tsuji sat there blinking. The story I just told you about sexual gaze was my own experience. Even now I can't forget it. When I was a child and my father would return home, I'd run off into my bedroom to avoid him without understanding why I did it. But I'd stay there until morning with the covers pulled over my head. Whenever I took a bath, from the time I was in the upper grades of elementary school onwards, I'd turn off the light in the bathroom whenever I was taking off my clothes. One time my father opened the door when I was not quite naked. I was still in my underwear, and didn't apologize or even seem surprised. He just looked at me standing there in the dark and told me to turn the light on at least, and then he closed the door again. Well, it wasn't anything too obviously unpleasant though, was it? I responded very carefully to Tsuji's question. I don't suppose it was really, now that I think back on it. But I'd felt it there in the darkness with every inch of my exposed skin. Backlit by the corridor light, the expression on my father's face, the look in his eyes. And then the couple of oddly too long seconds of silence before he said, "At least turn on the light." When did you find out about the child prostitution? When I was 20, I discovered it on the morning of my coming-of-age ceremony. I couldn't tell from this windowless place. It must have been snowing still. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. and that's another amazing novel, actually, the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we just now have one more reader left. Nancy's standing there, right in front of me. Oops, sorry, dropping everything. So Nancy is not a translator. She's actually Nancy Wu. She is an award-winning audiobook narrator and multiple Audi and Sorvas Award finalist, specializing in translated Asian literature, YA and adult fantasy, non-fiction, historical and speculative fiction. She brings emotional fearlessness, deep cultural insight and powerful storytelling to her work with warmth, range and sensitivity. She has narrated over 300 books, including works by Hiromi Kawakami, Emi Yagi, Chishin Yu, Ken Yu, and my translations of Sayaka Murata and Mayumi Inaba, as it happens. The first book of mine that Nancy narrated was Sayaka Murata's Convenience Store Woman. I must admit, I was nervous when I first listened to the audiobook. I didn't know Nancy back then, and I just hoped I didn't hate it. A narration, just like a translation, can make or break a book. As I listened, though, my trepidation soon melted away to joy at finding that I absolutely loved the way she had narrated it. And it's amazing. She doesn't live in Japan. She just happens to be in Japan at the moment, and she has come along here to read from Convenience Store Woman for us. Thank you, Nancy.
As Ginny said, I came last year, and finally, after 7 years of narrating for Ginny and Sayaka-san, I was coming to Tokyo, and I said, hi, I think you'd reached out to me on social media or something by that time, because it had been like 7 or 8 years, and I had done all of Sayaka Murata's books. And I said, I'm coming, shall we meet? And she got us together with Sayaka-san, and Sayaka-san took us to the convenience store where she actually worked on a little hike from the new Otani down to the actual store where she was working, and she wrote this book. So it was extremely special, and I feel so blessed. And sometimes you get a piece of literature that's really special as a narrator, and it's just a privilege. And when my engineer and I got in the booth and we started reading this, we were just laughing out loud, and we had to stop recording, and it was just such a delight to do. I was like, what is this book? So I'm so happy to have this relationship, and this time when I came back happened to be this week. So I will read the beginning of this beautiful book. A convenience store is a world of sound. From the tinkle of the door chime to the voices of TV celebrities advertising new products over the in-store cable network, to the calls of the store workers, the beeps of the barcode scanner, the rustle of customers picking up items and placing them in baskets, and the clacking of heels walking around the store. It all blends into the convenience store sound that ceaselessly caresses my eardrums. I hear the faint rattle of a new plastic bottle rolling into place as a customer takes one out of the refrigerator and look up instantly. A cold drink is often the last item customers take before coming to the checkout till, and my body responds automatically to the sound. I see a woman holding a bottle of mineral water while perusing desserts, and I look back down. As I arrange the display of newly delivered rice balls, my body picks up information from the multitude of sounds around the store. At this time of day, rice balls, sandwiches, and salads are what sell best. Another part-timer, Sugawara, is over at the other side of the store, checking off items with a handheld scanner. I continue laying out the pristine, machine-made food neatly on the shelves of the cold display. In the middle, I place 2 rows of the new flavor, spicy cod roe with cream cheese, alongside 2 rows of the store's best-selling flavor, tuna mayonnaise. And then I line the less popular dry bonito shavings and soy sauce flavor next to those. Speed is of the essence, and I barely use my head as the rules ingrained in me issue instructions directly to my body. Alerted by a faint clink of coins, I turn and look over at the cash register. It's a sound I'm sensitive to, since customers who come just to buy cigarettes or a newspaper often jingle coins in their hand or pocket. And yes, as I'd thought, a man with a can of coffee in one hand, the other hand in his pocket, is approaching the till. I quickly move through the store, slide behind the counter, and stand at the ready so as not to keep him waiting. Irashaimase, good morning, sir. I bow and take the can of coffee he holds out to me. Oh, and a pack of Marlboro Lights. Right away, sir. I take out a pack of the cigarettes and scan the barcode. Please confirm your age on the touch screen. As he does so, I notice him glance at the hot food cabinet. I could ask him whether he'd like anything else, but when a customer appears to be dithering over whether or not to buy something, I make a point of taking a step back and waiting. And a corn dog. Right away, sir. Thank you. I disinfect my hands with alcohol, open the hot cabinet, and take out a corn dog. Shall I put the hot food and drink in separate bags? Oh, no, don't bother. Together's fine. I put the can of coffee, cigarettes, and corn dog into a small-size bag. Until then, the man had been jingling the coins in his pocket, but now he suddenly moves his hand to his breast pocket, as though something has just occurred to him. Instantly, I deduce that he will use electronic money. I'll pay with Suica. Certainly, sir. Please touch your card here. I automatically read the customer's minutest movements and gaze, and my body acts reflexively in response. My ears and eyes are important sensors to catch their every move and desire. Taking the utmost care not to cause the customer any discomfort by observing him or her too closely, I swiftly move my hands according to whatever signals I pick up. Your receipt, sir. Thank you for your custom. Thanks, he says, taking his receipt and leaving. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, I say with a bow to the woman next to the queue. Irashaimase, good morning. The morning period is passing normally in the brightly lit box of the convenience store, I feel. Visible outside the windows, polished free of fingerprints, are the figures of people rushing by. It is the start of another day, the time when the world wakes up and the cogs of society begin to move. I am one of those cogs, going round and round. I have become a functioning part of the world, rotating in the time of day called morning. I am just running to put out more rice balls when our supervisor, Mrs. Izumi, calls out to me. Miss Furukura, how many 5,000 yen notes are there left in that till? Only 2. Oh dear, there must have been a lot of customers paying with 10,000 yen notes. There aren't many left in the safe either. I'd better go to the bank this morning, once the rush and deliveries have calmed down. Yes, thank you. Mrs. Izumi is a casual worker, about the same age as me. But the night shift has been so short of staff lately that the store manager has been doing nights and putting her in charge during the day, as though she were a regular staff member sent from head office. Okay then, I'll go for change around 10 o'clock. And while I'm thinking about it, there happens to be a special order for sushi pockets today, so please keep an eye out for the customer when he comes to collect it. I will. I look at the clock. Almost 9:30. The morning rush is nearly over, and I have to finish dealing with the delivery and start preparing for the lunchtime rush. I stretch my back and go out into the store to finish putting out the rice balls. The time before I was reborn as a convenience store worker is somewhat unclear in my memory. I was born into a normal family and lovingly brought up in a normal suburban residential area, but everyone thought I was a rather strange child. There was the time when I was in nursery school, for example, when I saw a dead bird in the park. It was small, a pretty blue, and must have been someone's pet. It lay there with its neck twisted and eyes closed, and the other children were all standing around it, crying. One girl started to ask, "What should we?" But before she could finish, I snatched it up and ran over to the bench where my mother was chatting with the other mothers. "What's up, Keiko?" "Oh, A little bird. Where did it come from, I wonder? She said gently, stroking my hair. The poor thing. Shall we make a grave for it? Let's eat it, I said. What? Daddy likes yakitori, doesn't he? Let's grill it and have it for dinner. She looked at me startled, thinking she hadn't heard properly. I repeated what I'd said, this time clearly enunciating my words. The mother sitting next to her gaped at me, her eyes, nostrils, and mouth forming perfect O's. She looked so comical, I almost burst out laughing. But then I saw her staring at the bird in my hand, and I realized that one of these little birds probably wouldn't be enough for Daddy. Shall I get some more? I asked, glancing at 2 or 3 other birds strutting around. Keiko, my mother exclaimed reprovingly, finally coming to her senses. Let's make a grave for Mr. Budgie and bury him. Look, everyone's crying. His friends must be sad he died. The poor little thing. But it's dead. Let's eat it. My mother was speechless, but I was captivated by the vision of my parents and my little sister happily tucking in around the dinner table. My father was always saying how tasty yakitori was, and what was that if not grilled bird? There were lots more there in the park, so all we had to do was catch some and take them home. I couldn't understand why we should bury the bird instead of eating it. Look how cute Mr. Budgie is, my mother said earnestly. Let's make a grave for him over there, and everyone can lay flowers on it. And that's what we did. Everyone was crying for the poor dead bird as they went around murdering flowers, plucking their stalks, exclaiming, "Oh, what lovely flowers! Little Mr. Budgie will definitely be pleased." They looked so bizarre, I thought they must all be out of their minds. We buried the bird in a hole dug on the other side of a fence with a sign that said, "Keep out," and placed the flower corpses on top of it. Someone brought an ice lolly stick from the trash to use as a grave marker. Poor little bird, isn't it so sad? My mother kept murmuring, as if trying to convince me, but I didn't think it was sad at all.
That was wonderful. So, everybody, we've come to the end of the programme. It's over. It's all done. But once again, I'd like to give a huge thank you to all of the translators and Nancy for coming out here today, and to Jeffrey for giving us free reign of his beautiful studio.
Thank you all for coming. This is amazing.
And everybody watching on the live stream. Thank you very much.
I'm going to do one little blurb about my studio here. This place we built. We bought it in 2001 after the Olympics, or during the Olympics actually. And then me and my son and my daughter, we basically soundproofed it and put 2 containers back there and put down concrete and everything. And we just created a space that we wanted to be in, and that we can. So it's a recording studio. It's also a video shooting studio, and it's an event space. We have a big ping pong table in the back there. Professional. My son goes to the national tournaments to play ping pong. So we also do ping pong here too. And it's open for events and things, and it can be rented. We do a lot of narration here, a lot of music recording too. And we're also open to ideas if you ever have great ideas like this, because we just like to build community and to connect people and do cool things. So thank you all for coming. Thank you very much, especially people who came from very far away too. But I appreciate your time, and it's been a great just to listen. I just love listening to everybody read. It's just like it's different than just being in your head, right? It's very, very cool. So thank you very much. We've got some wine, we've got some jibiru, some draft, beer. I don't know which one it is, but it's a Japanese. I've got a subscription to Japanese local breweries stuff. So if you'd like a little bit of that, got a little bit of cheese and stuff, and you're welcome to hang out. And
We've also got non-alcohol sparkling wine.
we've got champagne too, if you want to. Yeah. There's a mango juice, I think. Yeah. A little bit of pong juice as well. Yeah. So yeah. Awesome. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Hold me now closely. Say what you need. Just give me something to believe. I don't know the reason I followed you here. Just looking for something to believe. Here if you listen to what you can see, even if you got nothing to believe. Hear what I'm saying. Hold me now, please. Just give me something to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things that you needed to say. To believe when you loosen the chains that tie up your heart. To take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away, forget where it was. To believe when there's nothing to believe. To believe. To believe. Raise up your head now. Look at me true. Give me just half of what I've been giving to you. If I only was smarter, had a little more bread, if things were more quiet here in my head. If you hadn't left me like you did long ago, you wouldn't be sitting here all alone. You can think what you want to, but you can't make me grieve, 'cause you never had nothing for me to believe. To believe when the world starts running away from all of the things that I needed to say. To believe loosen the chains that tie up your heart. Take all the shit they've been giving to you and put it away. Forget where it was. To believe when there's nothing